there, dear listener. We hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. A Pan-African Nationalist and Garveyite network comes to showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
Mexican podcast. I think black people require too much violence. Like, we just constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to do that, you know? And we're kind of, continuing to stay behind.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
It wouldn't matter what you agree to do. They still are in the matrix. They ain't in the relationship. So it don't matter.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the lost and this woman.
The Cathedral Chief Show.
Who's not around enough to fight for her own? I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they do. I guarantee you they would let their brother go. They just wait to see what black people don't do.
From the Bakari Podcast.
Black people love to claim folks that don't. That hate them, right? They are slave masters, and they are ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, you put the same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you. You may want to reconsider who you pray to, you know.
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Because, I welcome everyone. Sometimes to my constellation, I think that we should be next,
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
Mambo! That's when you say Poa. What's up, fam? Shit. Feeling good? Up in Tanzania. No pun intended. Anyway, yeah, so I'm in Tanzania. Having a blast, obviously. We gotta continue reading. We did 30 pages last time. We're gonna try to go through this one quickly. Although, already I'm just like, why are we reading this book? You know, like, why are we reading this book? What is the, who cares? You know? But, whatever. Sometimes there are books that are classics that you say to yourself, people say, hey, man, you should read blah, blah, blah. You know, you have never read Walter Rodney before, blah, blah, blah. It goes to show you've never read, and it's like, okay, let me see what I've been missing, and if it's worth it. And that's the thing I also want to point out. You know, you're going to get to this, if you haven't reached it, you're going to get to this stage if you pursue it, right? Where a lot of books just don't do it for you anymore. You know, the way how I'm looking at Walter Rodney is how I look at most African authors. Nothing against Africa, obviously. Or I should even say most African American authors, although he's not African American. But most of us in the Western tradition are really, I think Brother Bakari said it the other day, so make sure you guys check out Brother Bakari. But it's like, most people are not trying to create their own system. They're not trying to have their own system. They're not trying to be their own people. They're trying to be, like right here, Walter Rodney. A lot of people, most people, are trying to get good treatment from white folk. You know, trying to get fair treatment, trying to understand white folk so that they can get ahead with white folk. That's not a thing. I'm not saying it's not a thing, it's not a thing, it's not a thing. It's just, that's just not how men think. I want to put it that way. Or, I'll say it this way. You know, so one of the people that people say I have beef with, you know, is Amos Wilson, right? Kofi's here. Shout out to Kofi, right? it was supposed to be like that. When you read his Blueprint for Black Power, it's like, I could become, if I just do X, Y, Z, I could become rich, along with this white boy. I could play this white boy. So it's like, sure, yeah, maybe. But, like, that's not how the white boy is thinking. The white boy is not like, if only I understood, the Congo better, then I could, advance in the Congolese economy. And it's like, I'm not saying he didn't think that at one point. Maybe he did. I don't know. I mean, it's possible that he probably did think that at one point, right? But it's like, you want to advance in such a way where you're not asking for permission. You're not trying to get in where you fit in. You want to advance to such a point where you say, oh, look, I'm here. Deal with me. Right? Deal with me or don't. Or I'm here, this is what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? When Wazungu went to Africa, he wasn't like, well, you think I could build a port here? I mean, sure. Like, again, if we're being honest, yes, he did say, you think I could build a port here? But he, I think it was one of the U.S. presidents who said, speak gently and carry a big stick. Okay? I really, like I said, you're in American school, you don't really know what that means per se, but you could try to understand it. Be polite. Be kind. Be gentle. But be armed. And one of the reasons why I can't stand most black speakers, for whatever it is, they're never really talking about being armed. So the white boy is always talking about being armed. Like, always. Like, you don't get it. Like, every damn day in America, the white boy's talking about being armed. You got to realize that. Every experience in America that you know of, just think about any experience you've had in America. Right? Think about any experience you've had in America. The white boy is armed. Just think about anyone. I'm being honest with you right now. Think about every experience every significant experience you have with regard to white folk. This white boy is armed in some capacity. Now you might say, well, no, Oni, you know what? I actually, I associate with, the boardroom or something. I associate with white folk who may not be armed themselves. That's fine. I get what you're saying, but, don't take it too literally, obviously. They're armed with something else. They're armed in some capacity. There's no armless white folk. Now, here in Africa, no, I should show you guys a video. There's a few people who are armed. Yeah, like you go to the bank, you go to the mall, you go to the ATM. There's somebody around there that's armed, right? Occasionally, you might see. I'm not sure if the police carry, but you might see somebody, like let's say like a military unit driving through. I remember seeing that in Jamaica, in fact, right? But for the most part, most black people are not armed and not in proximity to armaments. This white boy is in proximity to armaments, especially in America. He's in proximity, close proximity. You fuck around, you find out with these white folk. And of course, I'm going to give it to, black Americans too. You fuck around and find out with them as well. Particularly down south. But, I just want to say that, like, if you're really, like, this white boy, he said to himself, look, whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, and I'm not even making this up. He says, whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, I'm going to be armed. And I want to say this. I'm not making this up, because I want you guys to remember there are two. There's one white boy that I think you guys should read, definitely, right? And that's Machiavelli, right? Let me see. So he said something about and this is Machiavelli because he's so he's considered one of the best of the white boys, right? And so what I want to do is I want to show you guys. Yeah, here's a quote from Machiavelli that just kind of like really articulates what I've been saying as well. You know? So let's see. Hopefully this doesn't show anything inappropriate. That's a thing. That's a reality. You know? You could just click on stuff and then all of a sudden you see something inappropriate. Look, this is Machiavelli quote. He says, look, hence it comes that all armed prophets have been victorious and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. I say it's like nobody gives a shit what you're saying. Nobody gives a shit what you're saying. If I look, you're listening to this podcast, you're one of 5 people, right? No, not 5, but you're one of 20 people, right? You think I'm intelligent, maybe, I don't know, or entertaining, whatever it is. Can I tell you to jump off of a can I tell you to jump? Like if I come to you and I sit down and I say, hey man, give me a jump, right? Or, you know, not that you're, like, I'm not saying you're necessarily a man, but whatever. If I say, for instance, like this, here's something that's a little realistic, a little weird if you're a man, but, you know, something that somebody could realistically say. Somebody says, hey, give me a twirl, right? Now, for most men, it's a no. You know, some sisters might be like, sure, Oni, you want to see something, you know, and just give me a twirl, but some sisters might say no, too. All right? That's fine. And I'm an intelligent guy. I say, give me a twirl. You tell me no. Now I have a gun on you. And not me. Sorry, not me. Some idiot has a gun on you. He says, give me a twirl. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like, because you might say, hey, look, Oni, you're respectable. I'll listen to you for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Right? But you tell me to do something, I'm not going to do it. Not unless it abides with what I want in my life. That's fine. I understand that. Kudos to you. Okay? Now, on the flip side, you tell me, no, guy with a gun says, give me a twirl. Now, you're not into no guys. Or you're not into this guy at all. Possibly, most likely. Right? You're going to do that damn twirl. Or face the consequences. And when you face the consequences, believe me, you lose. You're not winning because you didn't twirl and you dead. You lost. I want you to understand that. You're not, oh yeah, man, at least you ain't twirl. No, you're dead now. And I'm not saying that, look, I'm not saying that I would twirl. I'm not saying that I wouldn't die. But I'm not saying that it's a victory to die. Remember what he says. Victorious versus destroyed. I want y'all, because that's the thing about a lot of these authors that come across, and I'm not saying that I'm the most radical, oh man, you gotta get yourself a gun. Because every black person is telling you, man, you gotta get yourself, a nuclear weapon. So, every black person is telling you that. So it's not like it's that advanced to say it. It's really about, like, how do we get it done? How do we get oriented toward it? How do we keep oriented toward it? Because again, this white boy he's talking about politics, he's talking about finesse, and he's talking about this, but at the core of it, at the heart of it, he's like, look, we're not going to get any fucking success unless we're armed. And I just want to say that, as people roll in. And so now we have, oh, sorry, I should even check out, I shouldn't even keep this window. But now we should have 2 people. Nope, we still have 1. So you did all that. Actually, we got 0 now. So it is what it is. But yeah. So Kofi was like, nah, no, this is not the book. But anyway, so that's pretty much it. So let's get into the system. Without any social system, the oppressed find some room to maneuver through their own initiative. For instance, under the slave regime of America and the West Indies, Africans found ways and means of gaining small advantages. They would flatter and con the slave master, who was so arrogant and bigoted that they were readily fooled. Now again, look at this. This is what African American literature is right at this point. We're flattering and trying to con the slave master. And we're like, aha, they got fooled. No, fucking idiot. You're still a damn slave. You're still under their slave regime. And sorry, I shouldn't say that about our ancestors, but you get what I'm saying. I'm talking about like our people today, where we're just like, this is the powernomics. You know, if we just apply this, we could fool them into. And yeah, okay. Do a blueprint for Black Power. If we just, if we just do this, we pull our, we do a susu. We're gonna shut up. Shut up. Like I said, man, I told you guys how to do it. I said Boko wa set na kedo. That's what I said. I said Boko wa set na kedo. Look it up. I said that. I said, look, you need a fucking university system. You need to educate your people on a tertiary level. Otherwise, like, you're not getting anything anyway. Okay? And we're not making those moves. We are not making those moves as a people. But that's all I focus on. That's all I'm talking. Because I'm not even playing around. I'm not like trying to fool you into saying, hey, well, if you just do this and if you just buy this. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. And that's what I don't like about these other people. They're telling you this stuff and you're believing it. A lot of us are believing things that don't make any sense. You don't worry, you can flatter and con them. No, you can't flatter and con them if you do not have a tertiary education. This is the chapter I'm supposed to be working on in my book right now. It's really difficult. I don't know how to phrase it. Right? I don't know how to start it. I've had a little bit of a roadblock and all that kind of stuff. My housing situation was a little interesting, to say the least. So every chapter I have has a tagline. Okay, the last chapter was really good. It was about scientists, because it was about Boko. It was about the Boko. So when you talk about the Boko, you're talking about primary and secondary education. Okay, when you're talking about Waset, you're talking about tertiary education. Okay. When you're talking about Keru, you're talking about a network of educated, professionals, specialists, that kind of stuff, right? But basically, the tertiary education is how you get the specialists. That's why it's so important for me to write this book, right? Now, why I'm saying all this, let me see if I'm opening it. I'm opening it right now. So there's a tagline for every chapter. One of the chapters, so the last chapter about, the Boko, was about being scientific, and it's like, look, knowledge and science are the weapons against ignorance and pseudoscience, right? Ignorance and pseudoscience are predominant, right? And then, so you get rid of ignorance, you get rid of pseudoscience, now what? Now you tell people to be specialized. And I'll show you guys this stuff, because it's pretty interesting, and, I know you guys were like, hey, man, but I'd rather hear Walter Rodney. Look, go read it. Just go read it. Like I'm not getting paid to do this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not getting paid to do this. So when you're not paying somebody, they're gonna do whatever they want. You know what I'm saying? And for the most part, nobody, very few people are like. Is anybody listening? Okay, Kofi, they went to church today. Oh my gosh, let me tell you about church. Shit, church is in Africa, man. I see why these white boys don't live with y'all, man. Because he's just like, y'all just be making noise. They were just. Just all morning. I had these weird dreams. Like my dream was like it was like 1,000 people talking at once. You know what I'm saying? like that's the thing about the brain. The brain is so complex. Anyway, so let me not go too off topic. So let's see if I can. It's gonna give me, when I go to browser window, it's gonna give me this window. Let me change it to the other one. So this is my book. I'm gonna show you guys because I'm proud of this stuff. So I don't know if it's too small, but I'm going to try to zoom in. But basically these are two different ways how I would start the book. Chapter 15, be specialized as the specialist top the hierarchy of social needs. Actually, I think before I had something like this. Let me see. The specialist rule and generalists are ruled, right? Something like that. But basically it's like, you got to understand that when you're in a society, there's a hierarchy of social needs. Now, I decided to scrap this idea because I don't know how to organize the hierarchy of social needs. But I feel like I vaguely remember something similar. But I don't know how to, because I have basically in the Book of Power we have different occupations and like different specializations. And so I have a list of them, but I do not know how to make it a hierarchy. Either way, like I don't know how to order them. I just know that they're on the top. I don't know what order they go into, right? Either way, like this is the concept. The concept is this: you're any society you're in. These are the people. These are the people. The specialists are the people. So you have this one. This is the first attempt. This is the second attempt. This is a scrapped idea. This is the latest idea, but I didn't have time to, like, I didn't write it. I didn't finish it, obviously. You know, Tasseti is the first kingdom in the human history, known as the land of the bow, much of the ancient world, and then I stopped, right? This is another one. Boko Waset Nakeru is the universal solution to power. Boko as an institution for secondary education. Waset is an institution for tertiary education, and Keru is a network of educated professionals. It's been this way since the dawn of history. Educated professionals, this is it. Educated professionals underwent exclusive specializations to preside over populations as far back as ancient Kemet. Okay? As long as you are not a part of the educated professionals with an exclusive specialization, right? You're screwed. And this is not my opinion. You know? I mean, look, it's an opinion. I'll give you that. It's an opinion. But it's not my opinion. Let me see if I can find it. I can't remember if it was Frederick Douglass or I can't remember if it was Frederick Douglass or if it was what's his name? Carter G. Woodson. But let's see if we can find it here. Men may not always get what they pay for. Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. I like that one. Doctrine, that so on and so forth. Frederick Douglass. Look at this. I wake up each morning and say, "Thank I am a man," whereas Delaney wakes up and says, "Thank I am a black man." You know. Anyway, society is a hard. Yeah, maybe this is it. Is this it? Yeah. Look at this. This is not my opinion. This is Frederick Douglass. This is a man who lived during slavery. Like, he was enslaved himself. He lived during slavery. Okay, and this is an observation he made of a society so distinct from ours, but still, it is vain that we talk of being men if we do not do the work of men. This is it. So look, when I say, look, I'm tired of reading these books by these, black men and black women talking about being men while not doing the work of men. I'm saying that in 2023, Frederick Douglass already told you, and I know Kofi's gonna have my head for that. He's gonna be like, "Why the world you talking about that mixed man?" I don't even know if this guy's really mixed, though. They just think he is. But, I mean, I guess he looks it, but still. But anyway, look. It is vain that we talk of being men if we do not do the work of men. We must become valuable to society and other departments of industry than those servile ones from which we are rapidly being excluded. You see what I'm saying? You're rapidly being excluded from the generalist occupations. Machines are coming. AI is coming. This is not me. This is not Dr. King. This is Frederick Douglass. Okay, he's saying you're being excluded from the underclass. You should become valuable to society in the specialized areas. It's not me. We must show that we can do as well as they. When we build as well as live in houses, so you can live in houses, you're not building houses. We can make as well as wear shoes. You're wearing shoes, you're not making shoes. When we can produce as well as consume wheat, corn, and rye, you are consuming, you're not producing, then we shall become valuable to society. And again, these are not even advanced things. These are not even advanced things. And I'll tell you this, in Africa, we are building the houses. We are building the houses. I think we're making the shoes. Not 100% sure. Yeah, I see people making shoes. And obviously we're producing wheat, corn, and rye. It's just that we're not doing anything like specialized, Like, this is still not even that advanced. And even Frederick Douglass is saying, you don't even do that shit. You don't even do that shit. So society is a hard-hearted affair. With it, the helpless may expect no higher dignity than that of paupers. The helpless. This individual must lay society under obligation to him, or society will honor him only as a stranger and a sojourner. He is telling you this is not me. Okay, I wasn't even alive. You weren't even alive. None of us were born. This is a world before our world. And Frederick Douglass is telling you, stop talking about being men and do the damn work. It's not. Sorry. I don't even know if this is the right quote, but you know, it is what it is. He said, "Look, oh, this was one of my favorite quotes." Okay, so Frederick Douglass. That's all that's Frederick Douglass. Let's see if it's Wilson then. No, not Wilson. Carter G. Woodson. Okay. When you control a man's thinking, no. The exploiters of the race. Oh yeah, this is another one. Let me see something. It's kind of it, but it's not it. It's a good quote, but it's not it. Yeah, let's just read it because it's a good quote. The Negroes, however, will not advance far if they continue to waste their energy abusing those who misdirect and exploit them. The exploiters of the race are not so much at fault as the race itself. If Negroes persist in permitting themselves to be handled in this fashion, they will always find someone at hand to impose upon them. The matter is one which rests largely with the Negroes themselves. The race will free itself from exploiters just as soon as it decides to do so. No one else can accomplish this task for the race. It must plan and do for self. That's not the best one though. The race needs workers. That's a good quote that you should always you could thing. Every man has two educations. His part, however, does not see the possibilities. That's a good quote. Has never been educated. He has been informed. So we've never received education. Blah, blah, blah. Can the Negro be miseducated by persons who depreciate their effort? Any person who votes for 3 generations the same way. Anyway. History shows, yeah, this is a good one right here. It's not it, but history shows it does not matter who is in power or what revolutionary forces take over the government. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end that they had in the beginning. And this is look, I want you guys to realize this. We talk about all these coups, and we say, you know what's going to happen? The same thing's going to happen after the coup. And you know why the same thing's going to happen after the coup? Because you have never done anything. Because you're not doing anything. When I tell you, go out and do something, you're supposed to go out and do something. Because if you do not go out and do something, guess what? You're not going to get anything. That was actually another Frederick Douglass quote. I'm surprised I didn't read it already. But he's like, you know, you don't get anything if you don't do anything. This is a long quote. I don't remember this one. Measure arms at present day. The Negro cannot develop. Oh, this is a good quote, but it's not. It's not the quote I'm looking for. This is a good quote on Americans. It's funny. Blacks are the only group of people that most precious. Yeah, that's when you give your children. Okay, so anyway, a little bit of tangent. Those are some good quotes. I'm surprised. Where's that Douglas? I'm surprised I don't have that Douglas quote here. Oh yeah, there he goes. Men may not get all they pay for in this world, but they must certainly pay for all they get. You know. And oh yeah, and I think he said something about. Yeah, I think it was in the power. I think it was in this one where he talk about lightning and thunder. Back in the day, I used to study this stuff. You know. Just memory lane right at this point. But yeah, it's not here. Sorry for that tangent. Well, not really, but you know, like I said, I'm not getting paid. You know what I'm saying? Not that I only do things for money, but you know, I think it's good. I think it's a good little tangent. Anyway, so let me see what the comments are like. Brother Bakari is here. Peace and Black Power. Because I'm late and I'm in and out because I'm doing yard work. Hey man, yard work is the best work. You know what I mean? No, it's not the best, but it's like you got to do like. Working is good. I actually need to. I need to get more work done. I'm going to try the programming and all that stuff. But yeah, shout out to Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari. Oh man, I missed Shoot the Breeze last week. Shit, somebody was coming after him. I ain't gonna say, but it was like, nah, that ain't cool. I had to show up this week. Although that thing was 3 a.m. for me, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. I was tired. You know what I'm saying? Right now it's 6:30 p.m. for me. Anyway, so they would flatter and con the slave master. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I don't like this bullshit. It's like you have to do is like your life should not be about flattering and conning white folk. That's my problem. Your life should be about how do I give services? How do I give products? How do I produce? Like right now, my thing is like you guys heard what I said earlier. My struggle is how do I produce a video game? How do I produce a book? You understand the difference? And it's like I'm not even. And you guys see when I'm producing a book, I'm not producing a book just so I could sell the book. Although I do want to sell the book, obviously. But I'm like, look, I'm trying to make sure this book is quality for you guys, so that you guys can also be on the production and service thing. You know, because I could do the easy, oh, well, you know, here's how you trick a white person. You know, there's this one, you know, I could do that easily. Easily. No, I mean, not too easily, obviously, because, you know, all writing is difficult. But I mean, it's easier than what I'm doing right now. You know, where I'm talking about Tassetti and stuff, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't, because I'm just like, look, when I'm giving you a product, I'm giving you a product for you to get power. Okay, I'm giving you a product for you to improve it, not to the, you know, here's how we flatter, you know, see the white man, if the white man is doing, like, I don't give a shit. He's really a fool, you know, you could trick him. And it's like, yeah, look, you can trick this white boy. You can, absolutely. I'm not saying that's false, you know, because obviously he's just a white boy. But your focus should be on producing. Like when this white boy makes video games, I want to make video games. Period. Let's go. Yeah. All right. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, I have a Discord. So yeah, I was talking about some video games on the Discord, if you guys are interested. All right. So similarly, under colonialism, many Africans played the game to secure what they could. Africans in position, like interpreters, police, and court officials, often had their way over the ruling Europeans. However, that should not be mistaken for power or political participation or the exercise of individual freedom. Under slavery, power lay in the hands of the slave master. Under colonialism, power lay in the hands of the colonialists. The loss of power for the various African states meant a reduction in the freedom of every individual. So again, this is what it is. So a lot of us, he says, a lot of books today are like this. They're mistaken. They're mistaking this, you know, playing the game or whatever for political power, right, or whatever. Colonialism was a negation of freedom from the viewpoint of the colonized. Even in quantitative terms, it could not possibly bring modern political liberation to Africans comparable to the little that had been achieved by capitalism as an improvement on feudalism. In its political aspects, capitalism as the metropoles includes constitutions, parliaments, freedom of the press, etc. All those things were limited in their application to the European working class, but they existed in some form or fashion in the metropoles ever since the American War of Independence and the French Revolution. But Jules Ferry, a former French colonial minister, explained that the French Revolution was not fought on behalf of the blacks of Africa. Bourgeois liberty, equality, and fraternity were not for colonial subjects. Africans had to make do with bayonets, riot acts, and gunboats. Okay. All right, so now we're at chapter 6.2. I should have probably ended here before, but it's whatever. Negative character of the social, political, and economic consequences. The argument so far has been aimed at showing that benefits from colonialism were small and they were not gifts from the colonialists, but rather fruits of African labor and resources for the most part. You see what I'm saying? Like, shut up. It's like, who cares? You know, like, this is the thing. It's like, yeah, I gotta show you guys. I know I'm a little bit unfocused. I'm feeling good. I'm not going to hold you guys, but I'm feeling good. I'm going to show you guys, because this chapter, like what I'm writing in this book is just so damn good. And yet I have to read this book. And that's what pisses me off, because the thing that, because sometimes y'all can see the page. You don't have to show this page, but anyway. The thing I don't like about society, really, right, is that like I'm not, like, at the end of the day, after everything's said and done, people are not going to say go read Oni. They'll go read that Onitaset book. They're going to say go read that Walter Rodney. You know, go read that Malcolm X. Go read that Dr. Clark. Go read that Francis Cress Welsing. Go read that Amos Wilson. Go read that. You know, it's like, look, I get that you guys are like, hey, man, that's perfectly fine by me. Sure, it's okay, right? But there's like, I'll tell you, in fact, there was this book. There's this book, and you guys should read this book. It's called When We Ruled by Robin Walker, right? He has a chapter in at least the first edition, because that's the edition I got or whatever, right? Where it's some other guy writes it. Some other guy writes this book about the 3 degrees of, I think it was science or something, or 3 degrees of attribution, something like that, right? But basically, it's like when you say something like there's different levels of knowledge. Yeah, different levels of knowledge, I think. And the top level, or like the basic, the first level is just, you know, so and so, you know, Garrett Morgan made the traffic light, right? And then the second level is Garrett Morgan did the automatic shifter in the lights or something like that, right? And then the third level is Garrett Morgan filed patent 344, which does X, Y, Z, so on and so forth, right? And he's like, and it was like that chapter was just so good because it was so rich, and it was like that's the kind of like the third level of knowledge is the kind of scholarship that I want to offer, you know. And the thing is that we're not doing that, you know. So those authors that I mentioned, they're okay, like at a collegiate level. What you want to do is you want to get to this level, and look at this. This is the reason why I bring this up is this. Like, we're just gonna read up to here, right? This thing. No, actually, we can read this stuff. It's just so good, and it's difficult to write this way. It's so good. Listen to this. There are two types of energies: kinetic and potential. One is present and real. One is future and imaginary. They describe the scientific perspective. Remember, this chapter is about scientific. The present serves to imagine the future based on the past. That's what it is. The present serves to imagine the future based on the past. The past was real, the present is real, and the future is imagined. Why do I say this, right? Because we're reading this book by Walter Rodney. Okay? We're reading this book by Walter Rodney. And it's like you're talking about a past that passed. And you're not even saying it in a way that is fruitful for your future. You're just saying, you know, these guys did something to us. Yes, we know this. And it's like, look, I do appreciate if I learned that somebody's done something bad to me. I do appreciate that. But you're taking too damn long. And you're not getting to the point of the future. But you're posing like you're getting to the point. And that's where I have a problem. That's why I have a problem with a lot of different authors, because it's like, I want to apply some scientific thinking to this thing. Okay, where were we? Where are we now? Where are we going? How do we get there? That's it. Okay, where were we? Where are we? Where are we going? How do we get there? This is not telling you. This is just telling you, hey, you know what? 500 years ago. Yeah, okay, that's where we were at one point. Okay, I understand that. Fine. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like reminds me of those guys, like you don't never hear me talking about, like, I'm not saying I never had no sort of trauma in my life, but you really hear me talk about, oh yeah, you know, this one time when I got, you know, and it's like if I do talk about that, it's like only relevant to the future. I'm not, you know, one time my mother, we didn't have any food in the fridge. What does that have to do with anything? You didn't have food in the fridge. Okay. Do you have food in the fridge now? Yes. Right? Okay. You know, or do you understand that you should go shopping before you, so on and so forth? Yes. So then what's the problem? You didn't have food 15 years ago? Who cares? You're still alive. Now, it's different if you're dead. Then it's like, okay, well, that's a tragedy. You know, 15 years ago, you died of hunger. Okay, that's big. But if you I went to bed hungry, nobody cares. I don't. And if you're telling me, oh man, you know, I went to bed hungry 15 years ago, that's not interesting. Shit, I think my jerk ass personality is coming out. I think my jerk ass personality is coming out. All right. So let's see. Tyler says, Onitaset was going to write that. You beat me to it. What were you going to write? What did I beat you to? He says, Dr. Amos Wilson already addressed why people must read periodicals such as Wall Street Journal. Yeah, and look, that's what I'm saying. With the Wall Street Journal, I want us to have periodicals. See, the thing about the Wall Street Journal is this. The thing about the journal, all right, this is what it is. I'll tell you guys about the Wall Street Journal. The reason why I do not even like the Wall Street Journal, I don't like that shit. You know why I don't like this stuff? Basically this. Let me tell you this way. I'll say it this way. Is Buhari listening to this podcast? Oh, not Buhari. He's not in power. Is Tinubu listening to this podcast? No. Is Is my brother from another mother. Yeah, okay. Kagame. Is Kagame reading this? Listening to this? No. Is Museveni listening to this? No. Is anybody? No. There's not an African leader at the president level, at least, at the national level, who's listening to me right now. Why? Because, the format and all that stuff. And it's just, realistically speaking, why should he? Right? Let me ask you this. Wall Street Journal, the last edition. Did Nancy Pelosi read it? Yes. Did Biden read it? Yes. Did Donald Trump read it? Yes. And if they didn't read it, somebody read it and summarized it for them. This is why I do not even like this quote unquote, because what it is this. These white people understand, look, we have specialists who are writing something important for our leadership to consider. We're doing it. And so when we're reading it, we're reading what their leadership are considering. That's fine. It really doesn't do anything for us, per se. But as our leader, and then maybe our leadership might be reading it too, that's fine. But again, it does nothing to do with us. What we need to be doing is writing our own journals so that we know confidently that our leadership is reading. Rabbi Jenner says they might catch me on the plane. They're not. They're not going to. Because again, I'm not establishing that way. And of course, I know how my tone is. My tone is not. My tone's not money. You know what I'm saying? About writing words which does not benefit the current predicament of the Negro worldwide. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like with the Wall Street Journal, it's like those are words which benefit the current predicament of white folk worldwide. I don't have to open up the Wall Street Journal to know there's an article on their birth rate. Probably once a year, at least. I don't have to open the Wall Street Journal to know there's an article on China. There's an article on Russia. There's an article on Israel. There's an article on Japan. There's an article on Korea. I don't have to look. And so if we're reading about it, sure, we get versed in the white birth rate. We get versed in the in the thing, and we could say, hey man, we know something about their white birth rate. I don't give a shit about no white birth rate. I get that you feel like, oh, that motivates them and that's some sort of emotional blah blah blah. I don't really give a shit because that has nothing to do with my situation. What I need is for African leaders to read about the birth rate in Rwanda, or the birth rate in Zambia, or the political situation in Gabon, or the political, that's what I need. You got a bunch of African leaders reading about the birth rate in Russia, and they could counter and say all that stuff. Someone says I have to push back on that about the Wall Street Journal. I mean, me personally, I never even read it, but I'm not saying it's not good information. Like again, if you're in the West, it's not. Of course, it's good information. I'm not even in the West though. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not even in the West. I could say that, yeah, like you said, you could know about their weapons. I mean, look, I think it's good to get intel off of white folk. I think that the best intel you're going to get is the intel you get yourself, though. I feel like you getting their propaganda, I mean, it's fine, obviously. Like, if you have nothing else, then that's fine. But, like, I'll say it this way. I don't think Putin is reading Wall Street Journal for its... Like, I'm not saying he's not reading it, but I'm saying that I don't think he's reading it as his primary source. The thing about us is that we're reading the propaganda as primary sources. You get what I'm saying? And that's where I that's where I'm like, no, we can't do that. Because if your primary source is your enemy's propaganda, or your primary source is just propaganda, period, right? Your primary source on China is the just basically whatever Xi Jinping says to print, right? then like yeah, you're gonna know a lot about China, obviously, but like you're not gonna find out any weaknesses. Not that not that I have anything against China. I'm just saying he's not gonna broadcast his weaknesses. You know what I mean? Tyler says you need a nation based on the continent, which is a power. No, not a superpower. In order to have a reason, need for a periodical you mentioned. Yeah, exactly. I mean, look. I think we can still we can still use a periodical, but the thing is this: we are not positioning ourselves to the point where Tinubu is. Well, at least not me. I'll say personally, Tinubu has no reason to listen to Oni. Like none. I mean, look, I got 6 concurrent viewers. You know what I mean? like why would Tinubu be one of the 6 concurrent viewers? You know, I mean, there's that guy Emmanuel Penuel or whatever. Whatever. He's like a big South African YouTuber. He can get an audience with Malema. You know, he can get an audience with I can't remember the president of South Africa, but he can get an audience with that guy because he's big. You know, just like Biden might listen to whatever's going on in the Breakfast Club. He might be like, "Damn, these black folk are stupid," but he's probably gonna listen. You know, I know Brother Bakari has something against China. Look, man, I'll tell you it this way: when I was younger, there was a certain Italian association you ain't talk about. I don't know why. They just said do not mention that stuff. When it comes to a spy network, there are just certain countries. There's Russia and China. And there's three people that you like, 3 entities you don't talk about online. There's 4. Realistically, you shouldn't be talking about America neither. But America's a little bit lighter than the other people. But yeah, China, Russia, and Anonymous. I ain't never said nothing bad about Anonymous. Okay, I ain't gonna say that's it. I don't mention no hackers. Period. You know what I'm saying? But no. I mean, look, I don't. Me personally, I like that China's giving it to America. I know you said, "Hey, but you're in America," but I'm not in America right now, so that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? When I get back to America, I'm gonna say, "Look, China, cool your fan." But when I'm not in America, I'm like, "Look, man, I don't give a fuck." You know what I'm saying? No, I don't give a fuck. I mean, obviously, you guys are cool, but anyway, but yeah. But like the periodical thing, it's like Penuel, he could do it, and he actually keeps his content political. He's just a freaking coon. But like that's probably how he got popular. On the other hand, you have like Breakfast Club. Breakfast Club is really popular. It's gonna like not Nicki Minaj, one of those. She's not. I don't think she's black, but she gets an audience with Biden, or she gets an audience with the other presidential candidate. You know, like if you're big enough, you can get an audience. Unfortunately, I have not navigated. I have been blacklisted hard. Like I can't even. Like let me see if I could even do it. I'll show you guys. Twitter.com. Like let me see if this works. So I'm not signed into Twitter right now. Oh, actually no, it worked. Wait, did it work? Yeah, wait, I don't think it worked. Alright, so look. I'm not even signed into Twitter right now. Check this out. I'm not even signed into Twitter. Look how blacklisted I am. So because I'm not signed into Twitter on this computer, let me see if this works. Okay, I'm on the wrong page. Look at this. So I searched my own name on Twitter. I'm not signed in. Look at this. This is from 2022. They don't even this was my last viral post, I guess. That's probably why they showed it. And I wasn't even that viral. It was like 2,000 retweets. This was another viral post actually. Okay, look, these are just my viral posts, honestly. Right? Yeah, these are actually only my viral posts, which is pretty weird. But either way, this is what they show. If I Google myself, if I look myself on Twitter, they don't even show my current tweets. Okay? Like this is not even, I'm not even making this up. You can see. Right? These are only my tweets that got over 200 views and 200 likes, I guess. I don't know. But maybe this is common actually. Maybe this is like a new feature where they only show your top post. I don't know. But the point is that I actually expected that they wouldn't show me. Like they'd be like, oh, this page is not available. But at this point, it's like, yeah, I think actually if I try to find like a post that I made, they won't show me. Now, obviously, if I press reply, I don't think they can show me anything. Yeah, I don't think they'll show me anything anyway, even if I wasn't popular, if I wasn't blacklisted. But the point is that you can't see my stuff. Wait, let me see if let me see if everybody else is organized like that. Hold on a second. Yeah, it might be everybody else is organized like that. Maybe they might have changed the organization. They might have changed the organization because this person. Well, I don't know if she's blacklisted. Honestly, I'm just gonna click through. Yeah, so they might have changed things to only the viral posts. But even so, what I'm saying is that, like, I remember on my phone or something, you could not you couldn't even open my page. Like, it's like this page is not available. You know? So they did change this formatting, so at least now they're showing something. But they're pretty much like, if you're like, who is Oni? Oh, he's the guy who joked about a white girl getting bitten by a monkey, and this stupid joke. This lady was being yelled at white people confrontationally. But yeah. So a little funny. All right. So, but yeah, I guess X changed stuff, but yeah. My point is that I'm blacklisted, like, hard. So, like, I'm probably not going to be popular, period. Now, unless there's, like, some word of mouth. But, again, that word of mouth is not really forthcoming. So, it is what it is. But, yeah, what are we talking about? So, but let me just look at the comments. We're trying to read this quickly. Bill McCarthy says, teach, Oni. That's why I... well, pause. Now I'm joking. Love you, my bro. No homo. I don't either give a ish about the white birth rate. We care too much about them. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, it's like, because the thing is they could change it whenever they want. You know what I mean? it's not like their birth rate is locked. Like, they are actively trying to change it, and like, even so, that doesn't change where their education is. Like, they still have like a whole arsenal. They were just talking about Russia's nukes. You know. Brother McCarthy says, I have something against China. He says, black people should have a problem with everybody that ain't black. Yeah, I mean, look, I think you I think it's okay to have a problem with people. It's just a matter of, letting them know. You know what I'm saying? Because, if you're not in a situation to defend yourself against, like, it's kind of like I don't like the Klan, but I'm not gonna go I'm not gonna go down south and be like, all right, fuckers, come out, come outside. Are we ready? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that. Like, maybe you would, obviously. Brother Makari is a badass, if y'all don't know. Brother Makari walk up to, motorcycle gangs and be like, what's up? Like, what's good? I don't do that shit. I ain't gonna hold you guys. You know what I mean? I'm that guy who, when a woman is banging at his door to, I guess, fight him, he's like, let me call the police. You know what I mean? Even for a woman. Like, I'm not gonna fight a woman at all. I'm not that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't fight people. I'm not saying I wouldn't kill people. I'm just saying that, if I'm gonna fight people, it's gonna be two ways. Either I have the advantage or it's on fair ground. You know what I mean? But if you announce yourself to somebody, you might lose your advantage and they might not give you the fair ground. You get what I'm saying? So like I'm not saying China, but let's say, Brother Bacar's example. If I'm like, look, I got beef with you, China, right? China's not gonna necessarily knock on my door and say, okay, well, let's have a one-on-one. I mean, if they do, that's polite, that's nice. I might respectfully decline, or I might accept. Who knows, right? But China is too fucking big to be thinking about the you know what I mean? Like, nah, I'm not calling them out. I'm not calling them to no battle because they don't have any reason to meet me outside. You know what I'm saying? You didn't mention the Italians because the orgs didn't exist. I don't know, man. You said, I don't know, man. You said, look. I remember I was on a bus, and I think even this white boy was like, don't mention that. You know what I'm saying? He was like, don't, like, everybody was just like, do not mention that, because you never know. You never know who's listening. You never know what they're gonna do. That's pretty much it. Brother Carter says, I can't post anything on Twitter. Yeah, exactly. Like they blacklist people. It's like, it's not even like I'm making this up. Like, I legit, like, there was a Twitter space, and I clicked on it, and these white people were talking about how to get out of being blacklisted, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And here's the problem too. They say when you write and respond to people who are blacklisted, that makes you more blacklisted. You know, so like even my brother from another mother, oh, I shouldn't say, but you know, my man Great House, you guys know Great House, like him writing to me, like gets in the way of his popularity, which kind of sucks. But you know, so that I kind of like try not to write him too much, honestly. But it's like, but that's it. Like that's the real world. Like these white people and their algorithms are not a game. So it's like it's whatever. You know, like I'm not really sweating it. Like I said, I there's this video game talk. This guy, he had a pretty good middle class income making video games. And one of the things he said about video games, and I know it's a little tangent, but he said he's just a toy maker. He's like, I'm just a humble toy maker. You know, I just make toys in my garage, and I sell them. You know, and it's like that's kind of a good mentality for me. Like what I need to do, I need to just be a humble toy. I need to finish making these toys, and you know, with the books, I gotta admit, I'm kind of a grandiose author. You know, writing about kinetic energy and potential energy and all that kind of stuff. But like at some point, I might have to be a humble author. You know, a humble author who's just giving you a good story. You know, here and there. Anyway, so let's just read this. Unfortunately, I didn't eat lunch, so you know how it is. All right, so I didn't eat dinner, so you know how it is. So the argument so far has been aimed at showing that benefits from colonialism were small and they were gifts from the colonialists, but rather fruits of African labor and resources for the most part. Indeed, what was called the development of Africa by the colonialists was a cynical shorthand expression for the intensification of colonial exploitation in Africa to develop capitalist Europe. Yeah, obviously. The analysis has gone beyond that to demonstrate that numerous false claims are made purporting to show that Europe developed Africa in the sense of bringing about social order, nationalism, and economic modernization. However, all of that would not permit the conclusion that colonialism had a negative impact on Africa's development. In offering the view that colonialism was negative, the aim is to draw attention to the way that previous African development was blunted, halted, and turned back. In place of that interruption and blockade, nothing of compensatory value was introduced. So again, in the past, this happened in the past. What's going on in the present? How do we get into the future? Like, what do we need in the future? And it's like this. Look, you tell me. Oh yeah, this white boy screwed us over. Okay, how's that going to help me in the future? How's that going to help me in the future? Like, what does this mean? Is this white boy going to help you now? If he's not, then who cares? You know? If I tell you, hey, you know, I went to my neighbor's house and my neighbor didn't feed me, right? Okay, they didn't feed you. Okay, now what? Oh, my neighbor's keeping me hungry, man. If only they fed me. Okay, now what? Because they're not going to feed me. You know, so you telling me that me telling you my neighbor didn't feed me doesn't give me food. So start explaining to me how I can get some food. You simply say, look, you know, Europe actually underdeveloped us. Yeah. You know, or you can simply say, you know, Europe actually just meant to steal from us. Like, if you just say this, hey, look, you just say this. This is good enough. Wait, what is it? The intensification of colonial exploitation in Africa to develop capitalist Europe. They just exploited us to develop themselves, right? So now we just so what's the future? Leave them fucking alone. Kick them out. But you don't say that. You just start going more and more on. I don't want to waste time. The colonization of Africa lasted for just over 70 years in most parts of the continent. That was an extremely short period within the context of universal historical development. Yet it was precisely in those years that in other parts of the world the rate of change is greater than ever before. As has been illustrated, capitalist countries revolutionized their technology to enter the nuclear age. Meanwhile, apparently I said this word wrong, but anyway. Meanwhile, socialism was inaugurated, lifting semi-feudal, semi-capitalist Russia to a level of sustained economic growth higher than that ever experienced in the capitalist country. That's another thing to remember, that socialism did really raise Russia to a different level, and China. Socialism did the same for China and North Korea, guaranteeing the well-being and independence of the state, as well as reorganizing the internal social arrangements in a far more just manner than ever before. Now, most people wouldn't say that about North Korea, but it is what it is. It is against those decisive changes that events in Africa have to be measured. To mark time, or even to move slowly while others leap ahead, is virtually equivalent to going backwards. Certainly, in relative terms, Africa's position vis-a-vis its colonizers became more disadvantageous in the political, economic, and military spheres. Now, again, this rise that China, and again, this is disingenuous. So Russia rose. China rose. Right? Those are two countries. India didn't rise during this time. Sri Lanka didn't rise and still hasn't risen. I don't know. I don't know too many. I do know countries, but you know how it is. Like Turkey, United Arab Emirates, all these things. All these countries didn't rise per se, but because you compare it to the two top dogs, and then America and Russia, the high, you're like, why did all of Africa go that way? It's like, well, did they have, like, the thing that made Russia succeed was Stalin. The thing that made China succeed was Mao. I forgot the name of the North Korean leader, but, actually, I think it's the family right now, right? But the thing that made them rise was they had good leadership. And the question is, do you have good leadership? And you might say, look, but they killed your leaders. They did. They did kill your leaders. Okay. And you think they didn't try to kill... you think they didn't try to kill Mao? You think they didn't try to kill Putin? The question is, why are you letting them kill your leaders? Or why are you collaborating with them to kill your leaders? I didn't finish the book because it's, again, some of these books is just like, what am I fucking reading? I want to give you guys the review for Challenge of the Congo, right? Lumumba had no way of surviving with Kwame Nkrumah as a confidant, or Kwame Nkrumah as an advisor. He had no way of surviving because Kwame Nkrumah literally, like, told him, look, man, get that, like, it was so fucking bad. Like, it was so bad. You have no idea how bad it was. Like Kwame, oh my gosh. Oh, like, I'm a little too hype. I'm not going to hold you guys. Patrice Lumumba was going to die. Like, I don't even know if Patrice Lumumba was going to be a good leader. I don't know. What I'm going to tell you is that he was going to die based off of the fact that everything was fucked up from jump. Like Brother McCarthy says, he don't like China and don't like Russia. The reason why I like China and Russia, and I'm not really too mad with the socialists, I'm not saying like, but you get what I'm saying, is because I like what they call strongman leadership. Strongman leadership. And Russia and China had that strongman leadership. The leaders who were like, look, not today. Like, you're not killing me today. You're not, and not just you're not killing me, I'm killing motherfuckers before you kill me. And I like that. And I'm not saying I like, death or some shit like that. What I'm saying is that I like that. I like when a man or woman, whatever, but I like when a person is iron-willed. I like when a person is strong. I like when a person puts their feet down. That didn't happen with Lumumba. Lumumba, Malcolm X tells you, he's the best person on the planet. Right, okay, fine. Best black man in history. I don't agree. I think Taharqa was, right? But notwithstanding, what I'm saying is this. And Nkrumah and him. No, apparently Lumumba wins the election, okay? He wins the election. And Nkrumah comes to him and says, look, even though you won the election, why don't you become the prime minister? And this other guy, I don't know if it's Shombe, let's just say it's Shombe, I don't know. But why don't you become the president, you become the prime minister, and Shombe become the president. Okay? The president has the military. So you know what that means? Lumumba had no military. And you know what happened when Lumumba had no military? He had no power. Nobody. What? And so you gotta say to yourself, why in the fuck would Nkrumah tell you to give up your fucking military in the name of peace? That's the stupidest. That's stupid. Nobody else. You see, like, Stalin wouldn't do that. Mao wouldn't do that. Nobody would do that. Biden fucking wouldn't do that. Biden wouldn't say, you know what? Even though I won the election, Trump got a lot of things. So Trump, you get the military. Like, if he said that, you think Biden would be alive today? And I know I'm a little hype. I know I kind of spoiled the book a little bit. I know I spoiled history a little bit, right? I know that I should have said that for the review. But, like, I don't know. I guess I'm feeling good. I tell you, man, you got to come to Africa and meet yourself a good woman. All right. But anyway, what I'm saying is this. you fucked up. So you can't compare yourself to a country where they don't fuck up. You can't compare yourself to Stalin. You can't compare yourself to Mao. You talking about don't talk about Russia. Don't talk about China. That doesn't make any sense because if Russia was run by Trotsky, it wouldn't have been that impressive. I think Lenin was okay. I'm not 100% sure, but I know Garvey said Lenin was okay. But Stalin really put Russia on the map. Mao really put China on the map, and that's the only reason why I like these countries. I want people to understand that. It's not that I like Russians or I like Chinese, and I'm not gonna say I dislike them because, like I said, I ain't trying to get jumped. I ain't trying to get ambushed. But what I'm saying is that it's not about you liking them or not. It's really about, can you appreciate when a man is a man? Especially when they're not a man, especially when they're not trying to fight you. You know what I mean? If Russia's not fighting, like Stalin's not got no beef with me, Mao got no beef with me, I'm good with that. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying, long story short, like, you can't compare yourself to these countries that had real leaders when you had leaders who were just fucking up. And when you read Nkrumah's book, because Nkrumah was a genius. Like, you think I'm smart, good for you. Nkrumah was smart, okay? But so, like, you read this book, you're just like, what the fuck are you printing? Like, he's printing, like, imagine if the CIA just printed all their documents, in a book. Like all their documents from 2022, in 2023. Like, imagine that. You just be like, what the fuck? Are you seriously printing all of your documents from 2022 and 2023? Is that really the right time to release those documents? Brilliant man. But it is what it is. Sorry for that tangent. Let me go see what the chat is. I was a little bit of a tangent. I'm feeling good. I ain't gonna hold you guys. Brother McCarty says, Russia and China failed because of socialism and communism. Look at them now. They're capitalists. Why people in the Asians have beef with you? Yeah, I'm going to say this. I don't, like, again, I feel like, I don't know. Like, again, I feel like I probably listen to enough socialists, enough Keyboys for me to be like, maybe there was a little, I mean, I could say definitely there was some, hand that America played. I would say that. Obviously, you can't live in a vacuum. And I think that when your leadership dies, you're not necessarily gonna have as good a leader as you had before. That happened in America too. George Washington. I mean, I'm not gonna say George Washington was a good leader. I mean, I don't know, honestly. But George Washington was followed by like John Adams or something like that, and he just wouldn't compare to the man before. But again, I'm not really familiar with America. And I'm not trying to big up America in any way, but no, I mean, I know that white people and Asians generally have beef with me. I'm saying like, I guess I'm saying like personal beef, Brother McCart's like, you gotta have beef with somebody. Look, man, I'll tell you this right now, man. I guess because I mistook myself as an African American when I was a kiddo. I remember a lot of dreams of, like, a lot of nightmares, if you will, like recurring nightmares of just being killed randomly for whatever reason. I don't remember what, but like just being killed in an alleyway, just laid out. So it's, a part of me kind of is just not trying to manifest that. Look, if we are face to face with a bunch of, other people, absolutely, I'm joining with you guys. You know what I mean? Especially if we got the numbers advantage, or if we on square numbers, like, because obviously we're taller and bigger, and faster. But if you talking about, look, man, I'm just gonna call, like, I'm gonna give them an opportunity to call their best guys. You know what I'm saying? I don't know about that, man. Because some of these white folks is boxers and shit. You know what I'm saying? Some of these Asians is is black belts, and if they not boxers and black belts, they riding tanks and they riding drones and shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with fighting somebody below my weight class. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got beef with people below my weight class, but I can't just have random beef with people knowing that not every, like, I'm not that heavy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I mean, 200-pound black man means something to, I don't know, 80% of the population of the planet. But that 20%, it don't mean nothing. Like, it means you lightweight. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna leave it at that. You know, so that's the only thing about it. See, I'm not Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari. See, Brother Bakari is a badass. So, see, badasses think different from the rest of us. You know what I'm saying? Badasses think, look, yeah, I mean, Brother Bakari tells us all the time. He says he would just walk up to a group of people and is ready to squabble with them. Like, ready to squabble with a group. Even my brother's a master martial artist, okay? He says, look, a man can't fight 5 men at the same time. Any man who survives an encounter with 5 men, that was voluntary. Like they decided to let him live. And so his is a master martial artist saying that, well, I was going to say master martial artist, but you know, he's saying he's an experienced fighter saying he can't fight 5 people. Even though he would brag about being able to knock out dudes, he's like, he can't fight 5 people. Brother Bakari walks up to 5 dudes. Like, he's different. He's you know, some people built different. I'm not built that way. No disrespect. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not a big guy. I'm just saying I'm not built that way. You know, I don't know, Oni. I have to take my love back. Too afraid of whites and Asians. We have to be ready to fight. I'm not saying I'm not ready to fight. I'm just saying I like the strategy. You know, the strategy. Look, I'm saying, look. I think when it comes to fighting, just a little bit. This is a big tangent. I think when it comes to fighting, you got to know what you're up against. You know what I mean? If I know what I'm up against, I'm with you. If I don't know what I'm up against, you got to tell me. Like if you saying, look, like I said, I'm a 200-pound black man. If you saying, oh, there's a 200-pound white guy for you, right? I got you. But if you say, look, Oni, we gonna fight these white guys, I don't know who they are, and all of a sudden, I don't know the white boxes, but all of a sudden it's a 300-pound white guy. It's like, my guy, like, pick another dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, give me that guy over there. Give me the 150-pound guy. Give me even the 220-pound guy. I'm okay. But you give me the 300-pound white guy, I'll tell you guys, real talk. I was in the subway. And you know how it is. This woman, like, there's a lover's quarrel. Big black guy, okay? 300 pounds, you know, easy. Muscle. He's arguing with his woman, who's arguing with him, and she just doesn't quit. Because it's like, this is not a guy you should argue with. And he's getting aggressive. He's getting aggressive to the point where I have to stand near and watch and think, yeah, exactly. So give you the 300 pound and think I need to intervene, right? Now, here's what happens. I'm on the staircase. He's on the other side, and she's like, nah, fuck you. Fuck your mother. You know? You see how you are? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, blah, blah. And you know, he's like, don't talk about my mother. You know, with your stinking ass mother. She's like, don't talk about my mother. You're dirty ass mother. And you like, girl, stop fucking fighting this guy because he's massive, right? So I'm standing there, and I can't leave a woman in distress. But at the same time, this dude is too fucking big. And so I'm standing there, and there's a white guy who's also on the staircase who decides to stop and look too. What does this black man say? He says, what are you looking at, glasses, nigga, or some shit like that? I don't know. But, like, what are you looking at, nigga, with the glasses? And it's like, the fuck? Like, you see this white boy, you don't got no animosity for this white boy who's looking, he's not going to intervene either, but, like, who's also looking like, dude, could you quit that shit? Because nobody's comfortable with this, right? You got no animosity, but he's ready to kill me. He's ready to kill me, okay? And I think my brother was actually telling me this. I'll tell you guys this. One time there was this, my brother was telling me, I wasn't there. He was like on the subway, and he said there was this argument between a man and a woman, and it was a giant guy, right? He says the giant guy was like, I guess he was like hitting his woman or something like that. And then I guess a white guy tried to intervene, and then he got clotheslined to the point where he flipped over a chair. Like big people are like, if you don't, like, I don't, unfortunately I didn't go to martial arts like that. So I'm not going to be able to squabble as well as a person who's been fighting often. You know, like I have less experience in fighting. I'm a tough guy. I'm a strong guy, right? But the trouble is that I think technique, like I don't think technique is going to necessarily win against strength per se. But the thing is that a big person might have greater technique and greater strength. That's one. And two, like it's just not advisable to, like it's just not advisable to pick random fights. Honestly, like if you don't know, because again, here's another thing too. If you don't know what this, like I remember when I was in, I don't know, I'm giving you guys stories about violence, but I remember one time, I think I said something like, I'm a king, or some shit like that, right? I was like, I'm a king, you know, just like bragging or feeling good about myself. And I was sitting down with my then wife, and I guess some kids overheard me, right? And I don't know, king could have been a gang reference. I don't know, right? So they're like, what? You wanna fight? You think you tough? And I'm like, look, I could take on kids. You know what I'm saying? Like I could fight a child, right? And so I'm like, yeah, man, what's up, right? You know, pretty much. And my wife is like, no, stop, don't say anything, no. And you know, the kids' friends were like, no, don't fight that guy either. But it's like, the thing about kids, like again, I would fight a kid just to discipline them, not like fight them, but like, you know, kind of discipline them and, you know, like put them in their place. The thing about kids though, and Brother Bakari, shout out to Brother Bakari. Brother Bakari is like, you're not supposed to be afraid of your own children. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing you're not supposed to be afraid of. Like, I'm not saying you should be afraid of white folk. You're not supposed to be afraid of white folk either. But the last people you're supposed to show fear to are your own kids. Definitely. But anyway, so yeah, I was reading the squall. But she was like, you don't know. These kids could have guns. These kids could have knives. These kids could have weapons that you don't. You know, or when you don't. You know? So, well, that's another thing to bear in mind, that like people, you know, and I guess the last story, and it's just kind of like the story that you tell everybody. I remember there was a sister, I was on a car with her, and I guess her son was just fooling around, like he was like 12 or some 13 or some shit. She's Haitian, right? And so she kind of like bumps into, the kid is like on the subway and it's crowded, and he kind of like bumps into a Dominican guy, and I guess the kid apologizes or whatever. I don't know. But nothing happens really. Like I don't say anything about it. You know, the kid bumps into the grown man, and the grown man is kind of like, you know, a little reprimanding. But that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be like, hey, chill. You know. She's like, you saw how he looked at him with hatred, because you know he's Dominican. You saw how she looked at him with hatred and how he's sort of so forth, and she's just trying to start a fight with this guy, right? And I'm like, and then you know I'm kind of playing it cool. But then she's kind of like starts lecturing me about why you don't try to fight this guy on the subway. And I'm like, you gotta. And so I had to pull up a video where this white guy and this black guy went into a fight. And the thing about fights in real life is that in real life they don't stop. Like somebody gets knocked out or killed. You know what I mean? Or unless somebody, like you have to rely on somebody else to pull you two apart. But you're not guaranteed to have somebody there to pull you apart, you know, and I'm saying that to say, yeah, I wasn't trying to, like you can't just fight. Like you have to, like if you're going to fight people, you have to know who you're fighting and why you're fighting them. Not why you're fighting. Like you don't need a reason to fight people, but you have to, like there's a lot that comes to fighting. You know, I'll put it that way. I remember one time, I was the last story about fighting, I guess. I remember me and this brother, we kind of had a falling out, and we were ready to throw down, but the police were like right down the street. So we just did it anyway. So that's pretty much all my fight stories. Well, not really, obviously. I mean, obviously I had some fights, but we'll get back to the book. Anyway, bit of medicines here. Brother McCarthy says crazy was the most. Trouble is that I'm not crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a really rational guy. You know what I'm saying? That's why I'm gonna lose, because I'm just not crazy, you know. Like, and that's exactly what it is. It's like you gotta know how crazy the other guy is, you know, because if the other guy is willing to like kick you in the nuts and bite you on the fucking, I don't know, air, right? Then like it's just like, I'll say it this way: even a lion, like I don't know what lions think about us, or even a wolf, I don't know what wolves think about us, but even a wolf will not fight you if you appear to be if you appear to be able to damage them. Because it's like, what am I suffering an injury for exactly? You know, even a wolf is like, if you can injure me, if you can make me limp for a week, that's gonna sabotage. That's gonna hurt my chances of survival, even if I kill you. So what am I risking that for? I'd rather go hunt a fucking deer. So if a wolf understands it, like, I should understand it too. Like, yeah, I'll pick a fight. Like, I'm okay with fighting people. It's just a matter of, let me see them. And if we're fighting, like, it depends on like what Bakari is talking about. If we're fighting to kill, or if we're fighting to show supremacy, then like, what are the fucking rules? You know what I mean? Because like, yeah, I'll fight a fucking Chinaman or a Russian or a white person or whatever. I'll fight a, you know. Bakari don't want to hear this, but I'll fight a coon too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll fight him if the rules are, you know, I'm not gonna be limping. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I could tap out if they're choking me. Otherwise, if they're gonna, you know, or, you know, obviously if they're smaller than me, yeah, I'll choke them. I don't give a shit. But yeah. Hey, sorry. So that's it. But yeah, China. You know, that's what I'm saying about China and them. But dang, yeah, I lost my brotherhood. Because I ain't crazy. You know what I'm saying? All right. So did the same for China and North Korea, guaranteeing the well-being and independence of the state, as well as reorganizing the international social arrangement in a far more just manner than ever before. It's against those decisive changes that events in Africa have to be measured. So again, it's not against those measures. To mark time or even to move slowly, blah, blah, blah. Africa's position vis-a-vis its colony, generally in relative terms, it went backwards. So the decisiveness of the short period of colonialism, and as a negative consequence for Africa's spring, mainly from the fact that Africa lost power. Power is the ultimate determinant in human society, being basic to the relations within any groups and between groups. It implies the ability to defend one's interests and, if necessary, to impose one's will by any means necessary. In relations between peoples, the question of power determines the maneuverability in bargaining, the extent to which one... I need this window closed. It's like I'm choking at this point. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'm gonna... in relation between peoples, the question of one's will, any means available. The question of power determines maneuverability and bargaining, the extent to which one people respect the interests of another, and eventually the extent to which a people survives a physical and cultural entity. When one society finds itself forced to relinquish power entirely to another society, then that in itself is a form of underdevelopment. Okay, sure, but like, what do you expect? Like, what do you expect these white people to do? Just show up and be like, hey, you have absolute control over everything. Why? During the you know what I'm saying? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. It's like a brother McCarthy talking about going to fight people. If we're fighting a smaller group, we're gonna set the rules of engagement. Why are they setting the rules? You know? During the centuries of pre-colonial trade, some control over social, political, and economic life was retained in Africa, in spite of the disadvantageous comments with Europeans. That little control over internal matters disappeared under colonialism. Colonialism went much further than trade. It meant a tendency towards direct appropriation by Europeans of the social institutions within Africa. Africa ceased to set indigenous cultural goals and standards and lost full command of training young members of the society. Those are undoubtedly major steps backwards. Tunisian Albert Memmi puts forward the following proposition: the most serious blow suffered by the colonized is being removed from history and from the community. Colonization usurps... I'm trying to call somebody so that they could close my window, but I was like, hold on, I gotta close this window. And apparently somebody's just like, I don't know if it's like maybe cooking outside, but I gotta close it because it's starting to choke me. Hold on a second. I'll check out the podcast.
Hello there, dear listener. I hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio, a Pan-African Nationalist and Garveyite network committed to showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
The Bitter Medicine Podcast.
I think black people require too much buy-in. Like, we constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to get ahead, and we're kind of, continually staying behind.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
To me, it don't matter. I think people are so dumbed down, it wouldn't matter what you reveal to them. They still are in the matrix. They're in the simulation. They're going to keep doing what they did, they lemmings. So to me, it don't matter, man.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the wasp and his woman.
The Cathedral Cheek Show.
When we start rising up to fight for our own, I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they're doing. I guarantee you they would have let their brother go. They was waiting to see what black folks was going to do.
Brother Bakari Podcast.
Black people love to claim folks that don't, that hate them, right? They're a slave master, and they are ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, if you pray to the same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you may want to reconsider who you praying to,
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Africans generally are welcoming of everyone. Sometimes, to my consternation, I think that they should be less, welcoming.
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
All right, sorry about that. It's like somebody was choking me. Like this, they just smoke out here or something. I mean, like, it's like cooking smoke, but it's a lot. It's like, I guess they start a fire. Like, it's not like a stove. It's like a full fire. When I was younger, I would fight to see what I'm made of. Yeah, man, I'm old now. I don't know if you know that, but I'm old now. I can't, like, I got no reason to, like, figure it out. Like, I'm too old. MC Mr. IC3 Black Reparations Nations here. So greetings to that brother, Mr. Tekken himself. All right, so the Tunisian Albert Memmi put forward the following proposition: the most serious blows suffered by the colonizers being removed from history and from the community. Colonization usurps any free role in either war or peace, every decision contributing to its destiny and that of the world in all cultural and social responsibilities. Sweeping as that statement may initially appear, it is entirely true. The removal from history follows logically from the loss of power which colonialism represented. The power to act independently is the guarantee to participate actively and consciously in history. To be colonized is to be removed from history, except in the most passive sense. A striking illustration of the fact that colonial Africa was a passive object is seen in its attraction for white anthropologists who came to study primitive society. Colonialism determined that Africans were no more makers of history than were beetles, objects to be looked at under a microscope and examined for unusual features. Now, again, I wouldn't include that, but whatever. The negative impact of colonialism in political terms was quite dramatic. Overnight, African political states lost their power, independence, and meaning, irrespective of whether they were big empires or small polities. Certain traditional rulers were kept in office, and the formal structure of some kingdoms was partially retained. But the substance of political life was quite different. Political power had passed into the hands of foreign overlords. Of course, numerous African states in previous centuries had passed through the cycle of growth and decline, but colonial rule was different. So long as it lasted, not a single African state could flourish. To be specific, it must be noted that colonialism crushed by force the surviving feudal states of North Africa, that the French wiped out the large Muslim states of the Western Sudan, as well as the Dahomey and kingdoms in Madagascar. The British eliminated Egypt, the Madis, Sudan, Asante, Benin, the Yoruba kingdoms, Swaziland, Matabeleland, the Zlozi, and the East African Lake Kingdoms as great states. It should further be noted that a multiplicity of smaller and growing states were removed from the face of Africa by the Belgians, Portuguese, British, French, Germans, Spaniards, and Italians. Finally, those that appear to survive were nothing but puppet creations. For instance, the Sultan of Morocco retained nominal existence under colonial rule, which started in 1912, and the same applies to the Bey of Tunis. but Morocco and Tunisia were just as much under the power of French colonial administrators as neighboring Algeria, where the feudal rulers were removed altogether. So it's really sad, honestly, how much we lost. But again, at some point we have to look forward. Well, it's good to know what you lost. It's good to know what you lost, though. Sometimes the African rulers who were chosen to serve as agents of foreign colonial rule were quite obviously nothing but puppets. The French and the Portuguese were in the habit of choosing their own African chiefs. The British went to Igbo land and invented warrant chiefs, and all the colonial powers found it convenient to create superior or paramount rulers. Very often the local population hated and despised such colonial stooges. They were traditional rulers such as the Sultan of Sokoto, the Kabaka of Baganda, and the Asante Hene of Asante, who retained a great deal of prestige in the eyes of Africans, but they had no power to act outside the narrow boundaries laid down by colonialism, lest they find themselves in the Seychelles Islands as a guest of His Majesty's government. One can go so far as to say that colonial rule meant the effective eradication of African political power throughout the continent, since Liberia and Ethiopia could no longer function as independent states within the context of continent-wide colonialism. Liberia in particular had to bow before foreign political, economic, and military pressures in a way that no genuinely independent African state could have accepted. And although Ethiopia held firm until 1936, most European capitalist nations were not inclined to treat Ethiopia as a sovereign state, apparently because it was African, and Africans were supposed to be colonial subjects. So again, look at this right here. So this, the thing about this is this. We're making it into an Africa thing. And it's like, the reality is this. When you're weaker than other people, that's how they're going to treat you. Oh, you went to bow before foreign political pressures, therefore you're not really independent. No, you are independent. Although Liberia was a special case, but you are independent. It's just that you're also weak. It's kind of like, all right, like say like Brother Bakari and I are like, hey, let's go to I'm like, hey man, I want to go to this I don't know, this restaurant. He's like, no, we're going to this restaurant. And because he's bigger than me, like, it's not to say I'm not independent. It's like, yeah, that's it. He decides, And I mean, and we can even make it more literal, but I don't want to make it like, like in a like he threatens me type thing. But like that's the way of the world. And I'll say it this way, technically, if you're independent, you can just walk away. You can just walk away. The thing about this, though, if I'm being honest, like I said, you guys, make sure you guys read the Book of Power. So, the Book of Power, I quote something from Marcus Garvey's Philosophies and Opinions. Okay, so there is the letter that destroys not destroys Garvey, but like sabotage Garvey, right? Is this letter? It's in Philosophies and Opinions. Okay, I also reprinted in the Book of Power. Okay, but in that letter, the investigator, if you will, is saying Liberia was mismanaged. Liberia's leaders were not up to par. They were essentially, before there was neocolonialism, Liberia was the neocolonial state. It was the model for neocolonialism. It was that's what it is. Like, if you have bad leaders, basically it goes like this. Marcus Garvey goes to Liberia is in monetary trouble. So the thing we don't understand is that you could be a nation, you could be a nation and be in monetary trouble. Okay? Or said differently, every city that you know of, every nation that you know of has a budget, right? And that budget, they usually try to balance it against their revenues with their expenditures. They try to balance their revenues with their expenditures. If you can get your revenues above your expenditures, you're doing pretty good. Usually, though, most nations, and not say you're doing bad if your expenditures outweigh your revenues, but like most nations are like that. Okay, Liberia was fucking up. Okay, they were fucking up. They needed money. They needed a loan. Marcus Garvey was like, I could give you a loan. France was like, I could give you a loan. England was like, I could give you a loan. America was like, I could give you a loan. Okay? if Garvey's loan went through, shit could have been good for African people. The people in America and the people in Liberia took the Liberian loan. And it was an embarrassing loan. But to say that they weren't independent, like to say that Liberia couldn't have chosen any of the other loans is not true. Granted, France and England would have probably attacked Liberia if they took up with Garvey. That's a possibility, right? It's obviously it's not history because we don't know. It's a possibility, right? Notwithstanding that, what I'm saying is that they were independent, but they also had bad leaders, and that's why I said about China and Russia, which is different. Like they didn't have bad leaders, like they didn't have them, at their ascent. But anyway, let's keep going. Oh, we got no comments. All right, so we're gonna keep trying to read. We are really, really slow today. I thought we were going to be much faster this week, but we didn't because, I don't know, I'm feeling good. The pattern of arrest of African political development has some features which can only be appreciated after careful scrutiny and taking away at the blinkers which the colonizers put on the eyes of their subjects. An interesting case in point is that of women's role in society. Until today, capitalist society has failed to resolve the inequality between men and women, which was entrenched in all modes of production prior to socialism. The colonialists in Africa occasionally paid lip service to women's education and emancipation, but objectively there were deterioration in the status of women owing to colonial rule. Realistic assessment of the role of women in independent pre-colonial Africa shows two contrasting but combined tendencies. In the first place, women were exploited by men through polygamous arrangements designed to capture the labor power of women. What are they talking about? The labor power of women? That's what you think polygamy is about? Anyway. What? As always, exploitation was accompanied by oppression, and there is evidence to the effect that women were sometimes treated like beasts of burden, as for instance in Muslim African society. Well, of course, they're Muslim. Nevertheless, there is a counter tendency to ensure the dignity of women to a greater or lesser degree in all African societies. Mother right was a prevalent feature of African society, and particularly women held a variety of privileges based on the fact that they were the keys to inheritance. More importantly still, some women had real power in the political sense, exercised either through religion or directly with the political constitutional apparatus. In Mozambique, the widow of an Nguni king became the priestess in charge of the shrine set up in the burial place of her deceased husband. At the reigning king had to consult her on all important matters. In a few instances, women were actually heads of state. Among the Levidu of Transvaal, the key figure was the Rain Queen, combining political and religious function. The most frequently encountered role of importance played by women was that of Queen Mother or Queen Sister. In practice, the post was filled by a female of royal blood, who might be a mother, sister, or aunt to the reigning king, in places such as Mali, Asante, and Buganda. This was also in Kemet. Her influence was considerable, and there were occasions when the Queen Mother was the real power and the male king a mere puppet. What happened to African women under colonialism is that the social, religious, and constitutional and political privileges and rights disappeared, while the economic exploitation continued and was often intensified. It was intensified because the division of labor according to sex was frequently disrupted. Traditionally, African men did the heavy labor of felling trees, clearing land, building houses, etc., apart from conducting warfare and hunting. When they were required to leave their farms to seek employment, women remained behind, burdened with every task necessary for the survival of themselves, the children, and even the men, as far as foodstuffs were concerned. Well, and this is interesting. So Chancellor Williams, I think, also spoke about this. Was it Chancellor Williams? No, check out the joke. But basically, men do the heavy stuff, women do the light stuff. And that kind of thing. That I think that's a real good function, even for life, and even for married life. Today. Like if men handle the heavy stuff and women handle the light stuff, Moreover, since men enter the money sector more easily and in greater numbers than women, women's work became greatly inferior to that of men with the new value system of colonialism. Men's work was modern and women's was traditional and backwards. Therefore, the deterioration in the status of African women were bound up with the loss of political power by African society as a whole, with the consequent loss of right to set indigenous standard of what work had merit and what did not. One of the most important manifestations of historical arrest and stagnation in colonial Africa is that which commonly goes under the title of tribalism. That term, as a common journalistic setting, is understood to mean that Africans had a basic loyalty to tribe rather than nation, and that each tribe still retains the fundamental hostility toward its neighboring tribes. The examples favored by the capitalist press and bourgeois scholarship are those of Congo and Nigeria. Congo still kind of messy, but obviously for different reasons. Their accounts suggest that Europeans tried to make a nation out of Congolese and Nigerian people, but they failed because the various tribes had their age-long hatred. And you'll still hear Nigerian people talk about tribalism. Well, they failed because the various tribes had their age-long hatreds, and as soon as the colonial powers went, the natives returned to killing each other. To this phenomenon, Europeans often attach the word atavism to carry the notion that Africans were returning to their primitive savagery. Even a cursory survey of the African past shows that such assertions are the exact opposite of the truth. Let's just discuss briefly what comprises a tribe, a term that has been avoided in this analysis, partly because it usually carries derogatory connotation, partly because of its vagueness and the loose way in which it is employed in the literature of Africa. Following the principle of family living, Africans were organized in groups which had common ancestors. Theoretically, the tribe was the largest group of people claiming descent from a common ancestor at some time in the remote past. Generally, such a group could therefore be said to be the same ethnic stock, and their language would have a great deal in common. Beyond that, members of a tribe were seldom all members of the same political unit, and very seldom, indeed, did they all share a common social purpose in terms of activities such as trade and warfare. Instead, African states were sometimes based entirely on parts of the members of a given ethnic group, or more usually on an amalgamation of members of different ethnic communities. So again, tribes were just extended families. All of the large states of 19th century Africa were multi-ethnic, and their expansion was continually making anything like tribal loyalty a thing of the past by substituting in its place national and class ties. However, in all parts of the world, the substitution of national and class ties for purely ethnic ones is a lengthy historical process, and invariably there remains for long periods certain regional pockets of individuals who have their own narrow regional loyalties, springing from ties of kinship, language, and culture. In China and Asia, the feudal states of Vietnam and Burma both achieved a considerable degree of national homogeneity over the centuries before colonial rule, but there were pockets of tribes or minorities who remained outside the effective sphere of the national state and the national economy and culture. Let's see. Brother Bakari said he has to go. I have to go. I'll be a part of the replay gang. I appreciate you for stopping by, brother. Speaking of which, I gotta write. Somebody called me. I'm just telling them I'm at work, and I'm calling this work even though I don't make money. I'm just calling it work because why not, right? But there were pockets of tribes, minorities, blah, blah, blah. In the first place, colonialism blocked the further evolution of national solidarity because it destroyed the particular Asian or African states which were the principal agents for achieving the liquidation of fragmented loyalties. In the second place, because ethnic and regional loyalties which go under the name of tribalism could not be effectively resolved by the colonial state, they tended to fester and grow in unhealthy forms. Indeed, the colonial powers sometimes saw the value of stimulating the internal tribal jealousies so to keep the colonized from dealing with their principal contradictions within the European overlord, i.e. the classic technique of divide and rule. Certainly the Belgians consciously fronted that, and the racist whites in South Africa had by the 1950s worked out a careful plan to develop the oppressed African population as Zulu, as Xhosa, and as Soto so that the march towards broader African national and class solidarities could be stopped and turned back. The civil war in Nigeria is generally regarded as having been a tribal affair. To accept such a contention would mean extending the definition of tribe to cover Shell oil and Gulf oil. But quite apart from that, it must be pointed out that nowhere in the history of pre-colonial independent Nigeria can anyone point to the massacre of Igbos by Hausa or any incident which suggests that people up to the 19th century were fighting each other because of ethnic origin. Of course, there were wars, but they had a rational basis in trade rivalry, religious contentions, and the clashes of political expansion. What came to be called tribalism at the beginning of the new epoch of political independence in Nigeria was itself a product of the way that people were brought together under colonialism so as to be exploited. It was a product of administrative devices, of entrenched regional separations, of different access by particular ethnic groups into colonial economy and culture. So that's a pretty interesting thing. This is what came to be called tribalism in the beginning of the epoch was itself brought about by colonialism. That's a pretty interesting description. Because again, right now, if you ask a Nigerian, tribalism is a thing. But again, like I said, well, a lot of people in Africa think tribalism is a big thing. But Tanzania has it less so. But both Uganda and Kenya and East Africa are also situations in which the supposedly tribal factor continues to be preeminent. So yeah, in Kenya, there's also that tribalism thing that you might wonder about. This is no doubt that the existence of the Buganda kingdom, which within independent Uganda posed certain problems, but even after misapplying the definition of a tribe to the Buganda, it still remains true that the Buganda problem was a colonial problem. It was created by the presence of the missionaries and the British by the British Malio land settlement in Uganda in 1900 and by the use which Britain made of the Baganda ruling class as sub-imperialists within the colony of Uganda. In Kenya, the pattern of colonialism was different from that of Uganda because of the presence of white settlers. No African group was allowed any power in the capacity of NCOs for the colonial office, since the white settlers themselves filled the role. The white settlers took the best land and then tried to create a new world within African labor. However, the African community, which lay outside the immediate white settler sector, was regulated along tribal lines. One of the numerous royal commissions of British colonialism published a report on Kenya in 1934. A contemporary Kenyan historian commented on that report as follows. Commissioner's recommendation, which was accepted by the British government, implied that Kenya was to be partitioned into two racial blocks, African and European, and the African sector, all economic, social, and political development were to be conducted on tribal lines. Racialism thus became institutionalized. Human activities within small groups connected only by kinship relations, such as the tribe, is a very transient phase through which all continents passed in the phase of communalism. When it ceased to be transient and became institutionalized in Africa, that was because colonialism interrupted African development. This is what is implied in Memni's reference to Africans being removed from history. Revolutionary African thinkers such as Frantz Fanon and Amilcar Cabral expressed the same sentiment somewhat differently when they spoke of colonialism having made Africans into objects of history. Colonized Africans, like pre-colonial African chattel slaves, were pushed around into positions which suited European interests and which were damaging to the African continent and its people. Continuation, some further socio-economic implications of the situation will be examined. Now, I want to say this. So, somebody was saying this. Somebody showed me this video of these European Jews who were like, hey, you know why we're so rich? Because we're tribal. Okay? You know why we dominate some industries? Because we're tribal. Okay? Yeah, tribalism is not bad. And this Jew is saying this, and it's like, okay, he's saying this, but maybe he shouldn't say this or something along those lines. But here's the thing. You pick up the Torah, you pick up their holy book, and that's what they tell you. They tell their Torah book is all about being tribal. Okay? One of the passages I remember from their Torah, right? One of the passages I remember from the Torah was something like, you can give a Gentile rotten meat. Okay? Let me see if I can find it. Because I think that's a really important thing. You can give a Gentile rotten meat. I know it's not the best way to... it's not the best way... Yeah. Alright, here. See? I got it. Deuteronomy. I'll tell you, man, Google is fucking crazy, isn't it? Like, you say something that's totally fucking off base, and it's like, oh, we got you. So let's see if it's it. Deuteronomy 14:21. I know you guys are like, why are we reading the Bible? I don't know which version you guys like. I think you guys like King James, something like that. It says, you shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself. Thou shalt give it unto a stranger that is in thy gates, that he may eat it. Or thou mayest sell it unto an alien, right? For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. So you see, and I think maybe a different translation might point out that the alien is the, like you see foreigner here, says stranger. I want somebody to say Gentile. I don't know if, so foreigner, alien. I don't know if any of the translations say the Gentile. So stranger, resident, alien, foreigner. They sell it to a foreigner since they are not under God's law. That kind of thing. I try not to use the G word, but I did it accidentally. But basically, or sell it to a foreigner because you are a holy people to, you shall not, so on and so forth. But basically, this is tribalism. They're saying, hey, look, you find a piece of rotten meat, you shall not eat anything that has died naturally. Like, you find something that's dead, don't eat it, okay? But you can sell it to another people. Like, this is tribalism 101. And this is how they get it ahead. They're like, hey, look, give the fucking trash to other people. Sell to other people. Trash. Because they might buy it. Sell them alcohol, sell them pork. Don't do it for yourself. I'm fucking hungry. I shouldn't say that when I'm talking about trash, but still, I'm hungry. Anyway, let's get back to the book. But like, yeah, they're like, hey, look, tribalism's not a bad thing. The thing is this, though. If you read, I never read their holy book. And I'm not saying that I know what's in it. What I'm saying is that there's a way to economically get ahead in this world that might not be applied by people who are tribal in Africa. So like you being about your group is good. You being exclusive economically in your group is good. What happens is, how are you retaining wealth and how are you reinvesting it? That's what we really have to start talking about. We don't have to worry about, like, you could be tribal. It's only a question of how are you retaining wealth and how are you improving upon it. And then, like, of course, like if your tribe is open, like, let me apply. If you're a part of a group of Africans who are about wealth generation, let me apply. I think your daughter looks kind of cute. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think your daughter looks cute. You know what I'm saying? She went to college. She couldn't find a man. Don't worry, I'm here. Put it that way. Let's just put it that way. All right. So anyway, let's go back to the reading. Let me make sure that you guys can read this. Yeah. All right. Pre-colonial trade has started the trend of disintegration of African economies and their technological impoverishment. Colonial rule speeded up that trend. The story is often told that in order to make a telephone call from Accra in the British colony of the Gold Coast to Abidjan in the adjacent French colony of Ivory Coast, it was necessary to be connected first with an operator in London and then with an operator in Paris who could offer a line to Abidjan. Now, of course, see, we complain about... like, this is the thing we complain about all the time. It's like, just replace phone call with airplane, with flight, and you're like, we can't get a flight from Gold Coast to Abidjan, right? We can't get a flight. What we have to do, if we want to fly from Accra to Abidjan, right? We gotta fly to England, then we gotta fly to France, then we gotta fly to Abidjan. Then it's like, okay, did you make an airport? Did you make an airplane? Are you flying between Accra and Abidjan? I can't say it. I don't know. If you're not doing those things, then yes, you're going to go the roundabout way. You're going to go the way that they set up. Because they don't have a need to fly between Accra and Abidjan. I can't say it. I don't know why. Abidjan. Maybe it's because I don't like ECOWAS. I don't like. Wait, they said Ivory Coast. Damn it. Fuck. I had an excuse. I feel like Nigeria has a country like that though. A city like that. But anyway, but yeah, if they don't feel a need and you don't feel a need to have a direct flight between these two cities, then why do you think there'll be a direct flight between these two cities? Like, why do you think there's a direct flight between any two cities? Like, why do you feel there's a need to be a direct flight between every two cities? And if you feel like there should be a direct flight between Accra and Abidjan, then why don't you have one? Why don't you have a direct line between Accra and Abidjan? There you go. Abidjan. Why don't you have a flight between these two cities? Or why don't you have a telephone line between these two cities? Oh, because you're waiting for this white boy to do it. Well, if that's the case, he's not going to do it. Because he has no reason to call. He has no reason to make a phone call from Accra to Abidjan, when he could make a call to London, and then make a call from London to Paris, and then make a call from Paris to Abidjan. And that's what it is. That was one reflection of the fact that the Gold Coast economy was integrated into the British economy, Ivory Coast economy was integrated into the French economy, while the neighboring African colonies had little or no effective economic relations. Exactly. If you have no, then why are we making a direct call? Why would I put in, I don't know, let's say this modern economy, why would I put $2 million towards making a direct phone line between two countries that have no effective economic relations, or have little or no effective economic relations? Why would I put $2 million into that? Just so that you could tell a story, not even about, so you could be like, well, instead of Gold Coast and instead of Accra, what about damn, I need to get my city game up, but basically another city. Actually, I was in Ghana. For some reason, it's hard to remember stuff. But yeah, like another city, a neighboring city, and they're like, oh, you can't call from there. You gotta call Accra first. Yeah, okay. You're just complaining about things you should be fixing. Again, where are we now? Where were we? Where are we now? Where are we going? And this right here is not a where are we going. It's just complaining. The following conclusion reached by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa in 1959 goes directly to the point. The most outstanding characteristic of the transportation system of Africa is the comparative isolation in which they have developed within the confines of individual countries and territories. This is reflected in the lack of links between countries and territories within the same geographic subregions. Okay, so why don't you do it? Some African trade did persist across colonial boundaries. For instance, the centuries-old trade in cola nuts and gold from the forests of West Africa to North Africa never completely ceased. Besides, new forms of African trade developed, notably with regards to supplying foodstuffs to towns or cash crop areas where there was insufficiency of food. That kind of trade could be entirely within a colony, or it could cross the colonial boundaries. However, the sum total of energy that went into expansion of inter-African trade was extremely small in comparison with trade that was export-oriented. Since this inter-African trade did not bring benefits to Europeans, it was not encouraged by them. And up to the latter part of the colonial period, only 10% of Africa's trade was internal. Okay, so why should Europeans encourage trade? Like, why should a foreigner, why should a stranger come into your community and encourage you to trade with people besides from that foreigner? You know, it's kind of like we told you about the story of the ancient Hebrews, if you will, right? If they're even a true story, but they're basically giving philosophy, right? So the story of the ancient Hebrews is, look, you find a piece of rotten meat, don't eat it, sell it. Okay? Now, if you're selling rotten meat to people, are you telling people don't buy rotten meat? No. Are you telling people to basically not eat rotten meat? Of course not, right? What you're doing is you're telling them, eat the rotten meat, because you're trying to sell it. Like, you're there to sell to them. So just sell them the rotten meat, right? Anyway, it is also worth noting that Africa was denied the opportunity of developing healthy trade links with parts of the world other than Europe and North America. Some trade persisted across the Indian Ocean, but on the whole, it is fair to say that the roads in Africa led to the seaports, and the sea lanes led to Western Europe and North America. That kind of lopsidedness is today's part of the pattern of undevelopment and dependence. Okay, but again, so Western Europe is going to build seaports and build roads for you to trade with South America and Australia and Asia and so why? And because they built these ports that only advantages them, because they spent $20 million, $30 million, $400 million to build ports, and now those ports are only bringing profit to them. They undeveloped us. They were never supposed to develop you. Kumasi. Yeah, Kumasi. Provide Triggers Revolutions here. Shout out to Provide Triggers. Kumasi. There was one. Oh, was there a lot of Cape? A lot of places like Cape something or like I remember there was like a lot of. There's so many places. It's crazy. I actually know some Tanzanian cities now, at least, so I could be like Mwanza, Arusha, Rufiji, so on and so forth. But again, sometimes you gotta pick a nation and just associate yourself with that nation. I do think that obviously somebody pointed out I need to get better geography skills, and I definitely should have that. But really, at least for nothing else, you should know, you should choose a nation and get with that. But it would be like that example where it's okay, you got something from Dar es Salaam to Accra, but you don't have something from Arusha to Accra or Arusha to Kumasi, and then you're gonna make a big deal about it. It's look, if people are flying from Arusha to Kumasi for whatever reason, then if it's profitable, then you should seek into building something. But the reason why you aren't trying to build something is because it's probably not profitable, because probably nobody, very few people are flying from Kumasi to Mwanza or Arusha, because what are you doing in Arusha? What are you doing what are you doing in Kilimanjaro? From Kumasi, you're going to Accra, and the thing is this: you could see the same thing in New York City, and I guess we went to airplanes instead of phone lines. But even the phone line thing, there are a lot of cities in New York that you probably won't get a phone line to. You know what I mean? Let me see if I could probably bring up, you guys know what I'm talking about. But there are a lot of lot of cities in New York that do not, like, okay, so like right here, there's 507 cities in New York. You know what I mean? So like, obviously, you could get a flight to New York City. You know what I mean? Like, you could obviously get a flight to New York City. But look at this. New York City, in fact, if you look at the cities, these are the cities in New York. For those of you not looking, I'll just tell you. New York City has 8.3 million people. The next biggest city has 787,000. You jump down to number 10, Yonkers, and it's down to 208,000. And everything else is smaller than that. So you have these small cities. Some of them don't even have web links, right? The smallest city with the web link is Elmira City with 25,000 people. But you go even further down, because there's 500-something cities. You have a city that's, damn. So some of these cities are like 4,000 people. Damn, some of them are even smaller than that. Okay. Oh, shit. There's like over 1,000 cities in New York. So, okay, let me just go to the bottom. So there's 1,500 cities in New York. One city is Red House with 30 people. So there's a city in New York State with 30 people. 30 people in this city. You're not going to get a direct flight between Red House and London, right? That's it. You're not. You probably won't even get a direct phone line to Red House, and London, even though London's a big city, right? Why? Because it's like, why the fuck would you? Like, you connect to New York City or some shit, you know? And that's just common sense. And it's like, the thing is that when it comes to, like, you have to, the thing I'm asking of black people is that when you're talking about these white folk, apply some damn common sense. And I'm not saying that, I can't remember the city they were saying, Accra and, Abidjan, right? I'm not saying that those are not big cities. I'm not saying that they're not New York City, but to whom? Is it big to people in Accra, or is it big to people in France? Because if it's big to people in France, then yes, you'll get a direct link to Paris. If it's big to people in, but it's not big to people in London, you know, it's not big to people in Accra. And because it's not, you're not getting a direct link. So you're going to have to go the roundabout way. Just like Red House. Red House is probably big to people in Red House. 30 people. 30 fucking people. That's a tiny number of people. 30 people make up a whole city. You're not going to just have a direct flight to Red House. And if you do, it's probably because it's an airport city. Like, that's the only, you're not going to have this 1,500 cities in New York State. You're not going to have 1,500 airports. You're not going to have 1,500, you know, telephone lines. You know, I not say telephone lines, but you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Okay? You're not going to have the same density in Red House as you have in New York City. I'll put it that way. Or cell phone towers. Like two of these cities might be sharing. I don't know. Again, I don't know the range of cell phone towers off the top of my head like that. I imagine that Red House is sharing with another city. Right? Like, you know, I imagine that much. Either way, if not, you know, maybe it's because there's a huge density of towers, or 5G towers, let's say, right? But like, New York City will have a heavy amount of like, you won't have the same amount of cell phone towers and 5G, you know, towers in Red House, or whatever it's called, Red House, right? Red House, as you have in New York City, which has 8 million people compared to 30 people, right? And so that's the same thing. And it's like, again, it's like important to who is going to New York City. Are people from Colorado? Well, no, of course you'll find people from Colorado, but like who's going to New York City? Like, what city is going to New York City? Because a lot of times you'll find that even if I'm trying to fly to, let's see, if I'm trying to fly somewhere in America, like, I might have to stop over at another city, you know, before I go to America. I go there. But I can't really say exactly because I'm in New York City, so like, that is the place where we would stop. But I know it's affects some people if they're, I'll say it this way. Oh yeah. So I think I had some family, let's say in Washington, right? They were trying to call And they were trying to go to Jamaica, try to fly to Jamaica. So they're in Washington. They couldn't get a flight to Jamaica. They had to fly to New York to fly to Jamaica. You get what I'm saying? So like nobody's really like, oh, look how backwards the Americans are because they have to fly to. No, it's like you fly where there's the most traffic. Like you fly to where there's the most traffic because otherwise you're going to be flying like 20 people. Or you're going to be flying empty. Like, yeah, 20 or you're going to be flying 5 people on an airplane designed for, 200 people. Which is just not profitable for the airline. So they don't do that. They just don't do that. Anyway, that's a mouthful. Let's go back to the book. Let me see if there's any comments. Shout out to Provide Trigger. Cape Coast, yeah, there you go. Bitter Medicine says, how's Arusha? I actually haven't been. Apparently, so the thing about Tanzania is that, like, Swahili's don't. I thought I got better with Swahili. I didn't. So it's almost like don't go unless you really know your Swahili. Or you don't mind looking stupid. 9 times out of 10. I don't mind looking stupid. I'm confident enough. But, like, it really sucks. Like, I sometimes, I'm with a lady right now. And, like, sometimes we're just out and she has to do all the talking. Which is, like, shit. Like, it sucks when a woman has to do all the talking for you. Like, it really does. Or, like, sometimes she might even, like, drone on with other people. They might be talking and catching up. And that's cool if you know what they're saying. When you don't, you don't. So I hear Dar es Salaam is the most English friendly, and it's not English friendly. So Arusha, Rufiji, some places of Tanzania don't even speak Swahili. You know what I mean? But like those places, they do speak Swahili, but it's really not English friendly. So, and I like that. I want to get rid of English. You know what I mean? So I like that about it. It's just that. Like, I can't, like, it doesn't make any sense for me to go. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, I don't know how to learn the language. I've been trying to study those books, but I honestly don't study like that. I'm even trying to get with ChatGPT a little bit and be like, yo, let's do some language. But, again, I have a more pressing issue of books, and all that kind of stuff. So, like, that's a little bit. And then, of course, like life is not. You know how it is. Life is not that easy where it's like, let me just sit down and study all day. Like, I should have been studying before. I tried, but it's not easy. Like, it's not an easy language. Apparently, it's the easiest African language to learn, but it's still a difficult language to learn. All right, so the damaging impact of capitalism on it. So sorry, for that reason, I'm like, look, realistically, it's up to you. If you want to explore, you can. But I would say, if you're trying to negotiate a lot and you're trying to discuss and talk with people a lot, then probably go to somewhere that speaks English. You know what I mean? Because if you can't speak the other language, you're not going to win. Like, you're not going to win at negotiations. And not just that. Somebody actually, so I thought that people do not call us thing. So the guy was like, I was in a Bajaji. So basically it's like kind of like a go-kart, but there's like 3 people sitting in it, and it's cheaper than a car, right? Cheaper than a car, more expensive than a motorcycle, right? And by cheaper, I mean like $1 or $2, $3, like that kind of price. Like between $1 and $4, like $1 and $5, right? Wherever you want to go, pretty much, right? This like all over Tanzania, pretty much, like all over the main places of Tanzania. So yeah, I was driving one point, and then the fare was 2,000. The guy said, "No, give him 3,000. Give me 3,000 because he's Mzungu. Like basically, he's a white guy. Mzungu. Mzungu really means Mzungu means white guy, obviously. But like he was using it like foreigner, like he's an American or something like that, and so they have more money. So again, the difference between 1,000 shillings and 3,000 shillings is 50 cents. So, like, yeah, again, 50 cents is not, like, I'm not rich. I think I'm broke, but I'm not 50 cents broke. You know what I mean? So, like, he's pretty right in the sense of, I don't care about 50 cents. But like the Mzungu, you know what I'm saying? Like he's like, oh, he's Mzungu, so therefore, so on and so forth. So it's like, but the reason why they think I'm Mzungu is because I spoke English, you know, with an English accent, no less. Well, not, you know, like an American accent. Whereas, and I don't understand Swahili. So it's like, if I was speaking Swahili, then they wouldn't, or they wouldn't, like they probably wouldn't. Now, granted, my son doesn't speak Swahili, so it's possible that they still would screw me over. But it is what it is. Hold on a second. Super glue. I think those are the two things I need. Oh, drill. Alright, anyway. So the damaging impact of capitalism on African technology is even more clearly measurable in the colonial period than in the earliest centuries. In spite of the slave trade and of the import of European goods, most African handicraft industry still had vitality at the start of the colonial period. They had undergone no technological advance, and they had not expanded, but they had survived. The mass production of the more recent phase of capitalism virtually obliterated African industries such as cloth, salt, soap, iron, and even pottery making. In North Africa, handicraft industries had made the greatest advances before colonialism in spheres ranging from brasswork to woolens, as in the towns of feudal Europe. Craft workshops flourished in Algerian towns like Oran. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on a second. This person keeps typing me. So you imagine this. Somebody asked me, "Hey, I'm going out. What do you need?" I'm like, "Hey, there's a list," and they're like, "Oh, it's too late to get that stuff." But I'm mostly getting these things, and it's like, then stop writing me. You know, like do not write me. You know, like if you can't get the things that I need, don't even ask me. Like you asked me, I told you. All right. So in North Africa, handicraft industries had made the greatest advances before colonialism in spheres ranging from brasswork to woolens. In the towns of feudal Europe, crafts workshops flourished in Algerian towns like Oran, Constantine, Algiers, and Tlemcen. But French colonialism destroyed the handicraft industries and threw thousands out of work. Same thing had happened in Europe itself when new machines had thrown artisans out of employment in places like Lancashire and Lyons. But in that instance, the new machines became the basis of the prevailing mode of production. And formerly independent artisans returned to factories as proletarians to master different skills and expand the productive capacities of their society. In Africa, it was simply destruction without redress. By the time that political independence was achieved, Slavic craftsmanship had been turned towards attracting tourists rather than meeting the real needs of African people. So again, besides, as was true of the European slave trade, the destruction of technology under colonialism must be related to the barriers raised in the path of African initiative. The vast majority of Africans drawn into the colonial money economy were simply providing manual labor, which stimulated perspiration rather than scientific initiative. Again, I already told you guys, you want to be specialists, you do not want to be generalists, because that's where you're going to lose. But even so, this guy's just not, he's not acknowledging that these guys were specialists. Africans connected to the trading sectors were sometimes successful in a limited way. The resourcefulness of West African market women is well known, but it was put to petty purposes. The problem posed to capitalists and workers in Europe while making insecticide from African peritherium was one requiring the resourcefulness expressed to the technical direction, but the problem posed to an African market woman by the necessity to make a penny more profit on every tin of imported sardines was resolved sometimes by a little more vigor, sometimes by a touch of dishonesty, and sometimes by a resort to juju. So I don't know what he's even bringing this up for. He's like, hey, these market women, they used to import sardines and they used to sell them with more rigor, some dishonesty, and some magic. Okay, so they're selling. They're market women. Okay, they're marketing. What about it? Right? He's just like, man, they're so amazing. This guy. Let me see. There's no comments. All right. By the way, I appreciate everybody for coming through. I know I got on a big tangent today, but, I was feeling good. Colonialism induced the African iron workers to abandon the process of extracting iron from the soil and to concentrate instead on working scraps of metal imported from Europe. The only compensation for the interruption would have been the provision of modern techniques in the extraction and processing of iron. However, those techniques were debarred from Africa on the basis of the International Division of Labor under imperialism. As was seen earlier, the non-industrialization of Africa was not left to chance. It was deliberately enforced by stopping the transference to Africa of machinery and skills, which would have given competition to European industry in that epoch. Obviously. Like, why would you empower your competitor? It doesn't make any sense. A guy wants your woman. What do? You give him money. You give the guy money. Like, why? You give him money. Why? All right. So in the period of African development preceding colonialism, some areas moved faster than others and provided the nuclei for growth on a wide regional basis. Northern Nigeria. Somebody I connected with somebody. Unfortunately. Hold on a second. Let me just tell them. So I connected with them, and unfortunately they're like one of those people who used to call me a bunch of times. In the period of African development preceding colonialism, some areas moved faster than others and provided the nuclei for growth on a wide regional basis. Northern Nigeria was one of those, and it virtually went to sleep during the colonial period. The British cut it off from the rest of the Muslim world and fossilized the social relations so that the serfs could not achieve any change at the expense of the ruling aristocracy. On every continent and within national states, some features of growth were always more outstanding than others, and thereby offered a lead to the rest of the society. The towns played the role in late feudal European society. While the electrical industry was an example of a similar impetus for development in metropolitan capital society in the first decades of the century, colonialism provided Africa with no real growth points. For instance, a colonial town in Africa was essentially a center of administration rather than industry. Towns did attract large numbers of Africans, but only to offer them a very unstable life based on unskilled and irregular employment. European towns had slums, but the squalor of towns in undeveloped countries is a special phenomenon. It's a consequence of the inability of those towns to play the role of expanding the productive base. Fortunately, Africa was never as bad off in this respect as Asia and Latin America. So he's like, look, these countries, we were ahead of Asia and Latin America, we were comparable. But also, like, yeah, you didn't have a good productive base, but that's where you're supposed to be. Like I said, me programming games, I want to tell you this, guys. So I don't even play games that much. Okay? I'm like I said, I'm not really African American per se, but let's say there are certain games that African Americans are known to play, like NBA and Call of Duty, right? Those are popular games. They're good games, right? 2K and Call of Duty, right? We don't make those games. We don't even try to make those games. There's a lot of it's there's so like you go to the, like I said, I'm a part of the I claim to be a part of the indie game development scene, right? Or at least I have proximity to that, right? Mostly white folk, white boys, and occasionally a white woman, right? Occasionally a black guy, sure. Occasionally a black woman, absolutely, but mostly white guys, and it's like, yeah, what do you expect? If some people are producing, some people are consuming, but you expect them to come along and produce for you? No. They're not going to come along and say, okay, all right, look here, African Americans, how about you guys, like, how about you guys profit, and, we make the thing, you profit, you make this. Like, no. Occasionally they might use, Def Jam, fighting game or something, but that's it. You're not. Like, the idea that you are so important to other people that they're going to sacrifice their time and energy for you on your behalf is just not realistic. It's just not realistic. Okay? Anyway, let's get back to the reading. Like I said, sometimes I check the comments. Instead of speeding up growth, colonial activities such as mining land, cash crop farming speeded up the decay of traditional African life. In many parts of the continent, vital aspects of culture were adversely affected. Nothing better was substituted, and only a lifeless shell was left. The capitalist forces behind colonialism were interested in little more than exploitation of labor. Even areas that were not directly involved in the money economy exported labor. In extracting the labor, they tampered with the factor that was the very buttress of the society for African traditional life, when a part of its customary labor force and patterns of work was no longer traditional. During the colonial era, many thinly populated villages appeared in central and southern Africa, comprising women, children, and old men. They practiced subsistence agriculture, which was not productive enough, and colonialists contrasted them with cash crop areas, which in comparison were flourishing. However, it was precisely the impact of colonialism which left so many villages deserted and starving, because the able-bodied males had gone off to labor elsewhere. Any district deprived of its effective laboring population deprived of perspective could not be expected to develop. There were several spots, and again, you're blaming. So what I can say is this: the white man did take your land, right? They did take your land and they did change your focus. So obviously, that is a thing. But again, like this is why you do not lose. This is why you do not lose. Like Brother Bakari and I were talking about fighting people earlier, right? What happens if... See, that's what I'm saying. To fight... Like Brother Bakari was saying, fight to prove yourself. That's fine, right? But here's the thing about the world, right? You can fight to prove yourself. That's fine. You could also fight to dominate another person. The question is, do you want to dominate another person? Okay? Now, you might not want to. You might think, look, I don't want anything to do with this Chinese man. That's fine. You shouldn't even fight him then. Now, this Chinese man might say, look, I'll fight only so that he can, so that he could work for me. You know what I mean? Like, so that he can, go in the mines for me. Right? And therefore, if me and him fight, I shouldn't lose. But if I lose, you know where I'm going to be? I'm going to be in the mines. Or I'm going to be 6 feet under. That's it. And that's the thing we have to realize, that some people are not fighting for the love of fighting. They're not fighting to prove themselves. They're not fighting to say, oh, look, I'm the best. They're fighting so that you can be in the fucking mines. So these white people came over to Africa and they were like, look, you got a lot of land. You're like, yeah, I got a lot of land and I'm feeding myself. He's like, look, I don't care if you're feeding yourself. You're going to start making coffee beans. I want to drink some coffee. You say, look, man, I can't eat coffee. Okay. And like, what do you expect him to do? Just go to Africa and be like, oh, okay, you got to feed yourself. And I don't really need coffee. Okay. He could have said that, but he didn't. That's it. He could have said that. Maybe that would have been the more moral thing to say, but he didn't. There were several spots within the Caribbean colonies which were sufficiently far removed from towns and colonial administrations that they neither grew cash crops nor supplied labor. In southern Sudan, for instance, there were populations who continued to live a life not dissimilar to that which had followed in previous centuries. Yet even for such traditional African societies, the scope for development no longer existed. They were isolated by the hold which the colonists had on the rest of the continent. They could not interact with other parts of Africa. They were subject to increasing encroachment by the money economy, and were more and more to be regarded as historical relics. The classic example of this type of obstructed historical development is to be found in the USA, where the indigenous population of Red Indians who survived slaughtered by the Indian whites were placed in reservations and condemned to stagnation. In the reservations in North America are living museums to be visited by white tourists who purchase curios. In southern Africa and Rhodesia, the policy of establishing native reserves was openly followed. Inside a reserve, the major means of production was the land, but the quality and fertility of the land allocated was entirely inadequate to support the number of Africans who were driven in. The reserves were reservoirs of cheap labor and dumping grounds for those who could not be accommodated within the money economy of the racist southern section of Africa. Further north, there were no areas named as reserves except in colonial Kenya, and to a very limited extent in Tanganyika. But the money economy was constantly transforming the traditional sector into one which was just as deprived as any reserve. The money economy of colonialism was a growing sector, that is not to be denied. However, it has already been indicated how limited that growth was. This might be important. Viewed over the continent as a whole, the growth in the so-called modern sector exercised adverse effects on the non-monetary sector. What remains is to emphasize that the character of growth in Africa under colonialism was such that it did not constitute development, i.e., it did not enlarge the capacity of the society to deal with the natural environment, to adjudicate relations between members of the society, and to protect their populations from external forces. Such a statement is already implicitly borne out in the inability of capitalism to stimulate skilled labor in colonial Africa. A system which must stand in the way of the accumulation of skills does not develop anything or anybody. It is implicit, too, in the manner in which Africa was cut into economic compartments, having no relation one to another, so that even though the volume of commercial activity within each compartmentalized colony may have increased, there was no development comparable to that which linked together the various states of the USA. Okay, so what? And USA is like a modern country, just a new invention. Like, you expect it to be everywhere. In recent times, economists have been recognizing colonial and post-colonial Africa, a pattern that's been termed growth without development. The phrase has now appeared as the title of books on Liberia and Ivory Coast. It means that goods and services of a certain type are on the increase. There has been more rubber and coffee exported, there will be more cars imported with the proceeds, and there will be more petrol stations built to service the cars. But the profit goes abroad, and the economy becomes more and more a dependency of the metropoles. In no African colony was there economic integration or any provision for making the economic self-sustained and geared to its own local goals. Therefore, there was a growth of the so-called enclave import-export sector, but the only things which developed were dependency and underdevelopment. And again, this is not bad information. It's just a question of, all right, well, now what do we do? Again, if you don't protect your leaders, what do you expect is going to happen? If you don't protect your leader, what do you expect is going to happen? A further revelation of growth without development under colonialism was the overdependence on one or two exports. The term monoculture is used to describe those colonial economies which were centered around a single crop. Liberia in the agricultural sector was a monoculture dependent on rubber, Gold Coast on cocoa, Dahomey and Southeast Nigeria on palm produce, Sudan on cotton, Tanganyika on sisal, and Uganda on cotton. In Senegal and Gambia, groundnuts accounted for 85 to 90% of money earnings. In effect, two African colonies were told to grow nothing but peanuts. Okay. Now again. Okay. You know? Like, okay. Every farming people have a stable food plus a variety of other supplements. Historians, agronomists, and botanists have all contributed to showing the great variety of such foods within the pre-colonial African economy. There were numerous crops which were domesticated within the African continent. There were several wild food species, notably fruits, and Africa had shown no conservatism in adopting useful food plants of Asian or American origin. Diversified agriculture was within the African tradition. Monoculture was a colonialist invention. Those who justify the colonial division of labor suggest that it was natural and respected the relative capacities for specialization in the metropoles and colonies. Europe, North America, and Japan were capable of specializing in industry, and Africa in agriculture. Therefore, it was to the comparative advantage of one part of the world to manufacture machines, while another part engaged in simple whole culture of the soil. That kind of arrogant partition of the world was not new. In the 15th century, the feudal monarchies of Portugal and Spain wanted the whole world for themselves, and they got the Pope to draw a line around the globe, making the allocations, but Britain, Holland, and France suggested that they was not at all convinced that Adam had left the will which gave the earth to Portugal and Spain. In like manner, it can be questioned whether there is any testament which stated that the Ivory Gambia should inherit groundnut growing, while the River Clyde should become a hub of shipbuilding in Scotland. There was nothing natural about monoculture. It was a consequence of imperialist requirement and machinations, extending into areas that were politically independent. In name, monoculture was a characteristic of regions falling under imperialist domination. Certain countries in Latin America, such as Costa Rica and Guatemala, were forced by United States capitalist firms to concentrate so heavily on growing bananas that they were contemptuously known as banana republics. In Africa, this concentration on one or two cash crops for sale abroad had many harmful effects. Sometimes cash crops were grown to the exclusion of staple foods, thus causing famines. For instance, in Gambia, rice farming was popular because of the colonial era, but so much of the best land was transferred to groundnuts that rice had to be imported on a large scale to try and counter the fact that famine was becoming endemic. In Asante, concentration on cocoa raised fears of famine in a region previously famous for yams and other foodstuffs. Now again, this has, there's two things. There's you lose, and there's you don't have good leadership. You know, when you lose a war, like that's it, you lost. You know, the terms of defeat are laid out by the victor. You know, I think even y'all boy Amos Wilson said something similar to that. Like, you don't win unless you could draw the terms of victory, but. If you can't draw the terms of victory. What do you want me to say? Like, what do you want us to say? What do you want us to do with this information that people starved because they didn't, so on and so forth? Like, what do you want people to do with that? Like, you didn't win. If they can somehow force you to only grow cocoa at the expense of yams and other foods, then, like, either you have bad leaders or you just lost a fucking war. But, like, what do you expect anybody to do with that information? If they're still doing that, then again, it's just bad leadership. And so what do you want people to do about bad leadership? What do Europeans have to do with bad leadership at this point? That's my question. The threat of famine was a small disadvantage compared to the extreme vulnerability and insecurity of monoculture. When the crop was affected by internal factors such as disease, that amounted to an overwhelming disaster, as in the case of Gold Coast cocoa when it was hit by swollen shoot disease in the 1940s. Besides, at all times, the price fluctuations, which were extremely controlled, left the African producer helpless in the face of capitalist maneuvers. From a capitalist viewpoint, monoculture commended themselves, most because they made colonial economies entirely dependent on the metropolitan buyers of their produce. At the end of the European slave trade, only a minority of Africans were sufficiently committed to capitalist exchange and sufficiently dependent upon European imports to wish to continue the relationship with the Europeans at all costs. This increased the dependence of Africa on Europe in terms of the number of persons brought to the money economy, and in terms of the number of aspects of socioeconomic life in Africa which derive their existence from their connection with their metropoles. The ridiculous situation arose by which European trading firms, mining companies, shipping lines, banks, insurance corporations, and plantations all exploited Africa, and at the same time caused Africans to feel that without those capitalist services, no money or European goods would be forthcoming, and therefore Africa was in debt to its exploiters. The factory of dependency made its impact felt in every aspect of life of the colonies, and it can be regarded as the crowning vice among the negative social, political, and economic consequences of colonialism in Africa, being primarily responsible for the perpetuation of the colonial relationship into the epoch that is called neocolonialism. So yeah, I'm just going to read through this. I do want people to know. Oh yeah, it's actually good to listen. So when you say, look, you know what, I had enough, you can still play the audio on mute. I think one of the reasons why I can't monetize is because I don't have enough watch hours. Granted, the reason why I don't have too much watch hours is because my content's not that great, but I think it's good. But obviously, it's not. I'm not doing daily, like other people, obviously, and I'm not really a YouTube content creator. You know what I'm saying? like I'm a guy who I'm a scholar who sometimes shares some scholarship. You know what I'm saying? I'm clearly not a YouTube content creator. But anyway, so if you want to just listen, play the audio, on mute, and then go back and listen again, that would actually work out pretty good. But anyway, so I'm just letting you guys know. I should probably let you guys know in the beginning. It's a little bit of a cheating thing, but it is what it is. Finally, attention must be drawn to one of the most important consequences of colonialism and African development, and that is the stunting effect of Africans as a physical species. Colonialism created conditions which led not just to periodic famine, but to chronic malnourishment, malnutrition, and deterioration in the physique of the African people. If such a thing it sounds wildly extravagant, it is only because bourgeois propaganda has conditioned even Africans to believe that malnutrition and starvation were a natural lot of Africans from time immemorial. A black child with a transparent rib case, huge head, bloated stomach, protruding eyes, and twigs his arms and legs was a favorite poster of the large British charitable organization known as Oxfam. The poster representation a case of kwashiorkor, extreme malignant malnutrition. Oxfam called upon the people of Europe to save starving Africans and Asian children from kwashiorkor and such ills. Oxfam never bothered their conscience by telling them that capitalism and colonialism created the starvation, suffering, and misery of the child in the first place. This is an excellent study of the phenomenon of hunger on a world scale by a Brazilian scientist, Josu de Castro. It incorporates considerable data on the food and health conditions among Africans in their independent pre-colonial states or in societies untouched by capitalist pressures, and it then makes comparisons with colonial conditions. The study convincingly indicates that African diet was previously more varied, being based on a more diversified agriculture that was possible under colonialism. In terms of specific nutritional deficiencies, those Africans who suffered most under colonialism were those who were brought most fully into the colonial economy, namely for urban workers. So this is actually a pretty interesting thing to keep in mind. Like, this might be an interesting thing, because a lot of us kind of want to know the original African diet type thing, and so this is it. For the sake of the doubters, several of De Castro's observations are listed below, occasionally supplemented by other data. 1. Investigators who have studied the nutritional conditions of primitive Africans in tropical Africa are unanimous in stating that they show no clinical signs of dietary deficiency. One of the most striking indications of the superiority of an indigenous African diet is the magnificent condition of the teeth. One researcher among 6 ethnic groups in Kenya could not find a single case of tooth decay, not a single deformation of a dental arc, but when the same people were transplanted and put on the civilized diet available under colonialism, their teeth began to decay at once. In Egypt, the peasants or fellahan had always suffered from periodic famines, but under colonialism this deteriorated to become chronic hunger. It was the intervention of the British which upset the balance of the peasants' diet, and comparisons with early accounts show that there were once a much greater variety of legumes and fruits. The of the post-Oxford famine is itself noticeable whenever the African contact with the European was prolonged. Committee on Nutrition in the Colonial Empire found a noticeable absence of animal fat and proteins in the Gambia. The absence of proteins of good quality is one of the principal contributors of kwashiorkor, and once again, comparisons with what Europeans saw in the Gambia ever since the 15th century would indicate that a change had come about after the coming of the whites. The Gambia not only grew a variety of foods in the early periods, but it was stock-raising country where meat was consumed in considerable quality. Throughout the 17th and 18th century, cattle hides were sold by the thousands to European buyers every year, and the local population ate the meat. How then could they have suffered from an absence of animal fat? Okay, the Gambia not only a variety of food. Throughout the cattle hides were sold by... Okay. Studies in Equatorial Africa had revealed frequent signs of dietary deficiencies caused by the absence of fresh foods among Africans entering the service of the colonizers. These include beriberi, rickets, and scurvy. Rickets is a typical temperate climate disease to which lack of sun contributes. But after colonialism had so destroyed the pattern of judicious food consumption in tropical Africa, even the sun was not enough to keep children's bones straight. As for scurvy, it is so closely identified with the English sailor that he was nicknamed Limey, from eating limes to prevent scurvy, while lacking access to fresh foods on long sea voyages. However, a scurvy epidemic broke out in the middle of Tanganyika in the colonial epoch among workers in this gold field whose wages and conditions of work did not permit them to get fresh citrus and other nourishment. In South Africa, white settlement and capitalism transformed the African diets from meat and cereal to dependence on mealy meal. Ah, shit, I just remembered. Hold on a second. I just remembered. Chat. Make sure. Yeah, so basically I have somebody who buys me fruits and stuff, and the fruits are so bland that I'm just like, we were just reading about citrus. It's like I don't even want to eat the oranges here. So I was just like, hey, check with I was going to tell them to check with the AI about, like what's the best type of texture for fruits. Although, yeah, because a lot of these fruits are just so freaking, like, because, anywhere you go, if you buy something that's not fully ripe, or you buy something that's not, ready, or, whatever, it's just not going to taste great. And in America, it's a little harder to find things that are not going to taste great, but it's a little easier here in Tanzania. So anyway, in South Africa, white settlements and capitalism transformed African diets from meat and cereal to dependence on mealy maize. Pellagra, or lurfskin, was unknown in South Africa until about 1914. Subsequently, it became a scourge among Africans because it derives from absence of milk and meat. An official report on Basutoland, now Lesotho, had this to say: according to residents of long-standing, the physique and health of the Basuto today is not what it used to be. Malnutrition is seen in every village, dispensary, school, and recruiting office. Malscurry and subscorpic conditions are not infrequent. Pellagra is becoming more and more frequent, and lower resistance to disease appear increasingly apparent. It is becoming generally accepted, too, that the occurrence of leprosy is associated with faulty diet. Okay, let me see what the comments are. No comments, okay. All right. That's fine. Maybe you guys are like jogging or some shit, right? So we're at 56 of 129, so we're really trying to just go to 60. So to clinch the argument that colonialism had a deleterious effect on so that's just 3 more pages. Deleterious effect on the Africans as a physical and hence mental entity, is useful to point to those African people who until today had managed to maintain their own pattern of existence insofar as food is concerned. Pastoral Maasai, Gala, Ankole, Batusa, and Somali are all in that category. Their physique is generally so superb, their resistance and endurance so great, that they have become the objects of scientific research to discover why they do so much better than the well-fed capitalists who are collapsing from heart disease. In the light of the prevailing balance sheet, and that was Somalia there, right? In the light of the prevailing balance sheet concept of what colonial rule was about, it still remains to take note of European innovations in Africa, such as modern medicine, clinical surgery, and immunization. So surgery, I hear, is one of the more important things that white people do offer. Like, even when you talk to, like, radical Africans, they're like, you're like, I wouldn't go to the doctor for modern medicine. But surgery, absolutely. They're like, I wouldn't do immunization. I wouldn't do modern medicine. Surgery, yeah. And it's weird, because it's like, that's where the white boy has a knife on you. But, okay. It would be absurd to deny that there were objectively positive features, however limited they were qualitatively. However, they had to be weighed against numerous setbacks. Oh my gosh. There were positive things, but let's wait. Okay. Setbacks received by Africa and Austria due to colonialism, as well as against the contributions of Africans made to Europe. And again, Africa made to Europe. Okay. European science, and I'm not saying that we didn't. It's just like, what are you talking about? You know? Like, why are you talking about that? And that European science met the needs of its own society, particularly those of the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie, okay, so what? They met the needs of the people who were rich who could pay for those needs. You know? Like, a surgery, in order to get somebody to perform surgery on you, you should pay them a handsome fee. Like, you should pay them a handsome amount of money, right? And so the people who can pay them a handsome amount of money are the rich. You know, otherwise it's like, yeah, sure, it's good if somebody just does their skill on you, but there's one, there's supply and demand, and two, it's like it probably costs them a lot to learn what they're doing, and they're at a huge risk if they mess up. You know, like, I don't know. It's just this. It's the privilege. It's the privilege. You know. All right. So the bourgeoisie did not suffer from hunger and starvation. Bourgeois science, therefore, did not consider those things as needs which had to be met and overcome, and not even among their own workers, and least of all on behalf of Africans. There's just a specific application of the general principles that the exploitation of Africa was being used to create a gender gap between African capital. That's not even an example. Exploitation and the comparative disadvantage and the ingredients of underdevelopment. That's not even an example. That was stupid. All right, education for underdevelopment. Okay, they shouldn't educate you anyway. They shouldn't be educating you anyway. But anyway, education is crucial in any type of society for the preservation of the lives of its members and the maintenance of the social structure. Yeah, so educate yourself. Under certain circumstances, education also promotes social change. The greater proportion of the education is informal, being acquired by the young from the example and behavior of elders in society. Under normal circumstances, education grows out of the environment, the learning process being directly related to the pattern of work in the society. Among the Bamba of what was the northern Rhodesia, children by the age of 6 could name 50 to 60 species of tree plants without hesitation, but they knew very little about ornamental flowers. The explanation is simply that knowledge of the tree was a necessity in an environment of cut and burn agriculture and in a situation where numerous households' needs were met by tree products. Flowers, however, were irrelevant to survival. Indeed, the most crucial aspect of pre-colonial African education was its relevance to Africans, in sharp contrast with those who were later introduced. The following features of indigenous African education can be considered outstanding. Its close links with social life, both in the material and spiritual sense, its collective nature, its many-sidedness, and its progressive development in conformity with the successive stages of physical, emotional, and mental development of the child. There was no separation of education and productive activity or any division between manual and intellectual education. Altogether, through mainly informal means, pre-colonial African education matched the reality of pre-colonial African society and produced well-rounded personalities to fit into the society. Some aspects of African education were formal, that is to say, there was a specific program and a conscious division between teacher and pupils. Formal education in pre-colonial Africa was also directly connected with the purpose of the society, just like informal education. The programs of teachings were restricted to certain periods in the life of every individual, notably the period of initiation or coming of age. Many African societies had circumcision ceremonies for males and for both sexes, and for some time before the ceremonies of teaching program was arranged. The length of time involved could vary from a few weeks to several years. A famous example of the latter was the initiation school held by the Poro Brotherhood in Sierra Leone. Formal education was also available at a later stage in life, such as on the occasion of passing from one age grade to another or joining a new brotherhood. Specialized functions such as hunting, organizing religious rituals, and the practice of medicine definitely involved formal education within the family or clan. Such educational practices also date back to communal times in Africa, but they persisted in the more developed African feudal and pre-feudal societies, and they were to be found on the eve of colonialism. As the mode of production moved towards feudalism in Africa, new features also emerged within the educational pattern. There was, for instance, more formal specialization. So again, specialization is really important. So it's actually not bad that I'm reading this, because the proportion of but again, I'm talking about different specialization, because the proportion of, and you guys can read about that. You guys can read about that in the Book of Power. So make sure you guys check out the Book of Power. Remember, I'm not a YouTuber. I'm an author. So just remember that when you're like, hey, how can I support Oni? I want to give him a super chat. Don't worry about that. Just get a book. Right? Because the portion of formal to informal education increases with technological advance. Apart from hunting and religion, the division of labor made it necessary to create guilds, passing down the technique of ironworking, leather making, cloth manufacture, pottery molding, professional trading, and so on. The emphasis on military force also led to formal education in that sphere, as in the case of Dahomey, Rwanda, and Zulu cited earlier. A state structure with a well-defined ruling class always encouraged the use of history as a means of glorifying the class in power. So in the Yoruba state of Keta in the 19th century, there existed a school of history where a master drilled into the memory of his pupils a long list of the kings of Keta and their achievements. Of course, course, reliance on memory alone placed severe limits on education of that type, and that is why education was much more advanced in those African countries where the use of writing had come into being. Along the Nile in North Africa and Ethiopia and the Western Sudan, and along the East African coast, a minority of Africans became literate, producing a situation comparable to Asia and Europe before the latter part of the 19th century. As in other parts of the world, literacy in Africa was connected with religion, so that in Islamic countries it was a Quranic education, and in Christian Ethiopia the education was designed to train priests and monks. Muslim education was particularly extensive at the primary level, and it was also available at a secondary and university level. In Egypt, there was Al-Azhar University, in Morocco, the University of Fez, and in Mali, the University of Timbuktu, all testimony to the standard of education achieved in Africa before the colonial intrusion. The colonizers did not introduce education into Africa. They introduced a new set of formal educational institutions, which partly supplemented. And so this is page 60. So we just go to 61 and just read up to the last, finish this paragraph. The colonizers did not introduce, and that's what you got to do when you're reading. Just finish the last paragraph on the last page. So that way you start off you're not like, where was I? Was I in the third paragraph? Was I in the fourth paragraph? Just follow a certain habit, and then you won't always double check and double back and all that kind of stuff, or possibly skips a paragraph. Right? The colonizers did not introduce education into Africa. They introduced a new set of formal educational institutions, which partially supplemented and partly replaced those which were there before. Okay, whatever. The colonial system also, of course they didn't introduce education, but still, the colonial system also stimulated values and practices which amounted to new and formal education. The main purpose of the colonial school system was to train Africans to help man the local administration at the lowest ranks and to staff the private capitalist firms owned by Europeans, obviously. In effect, that meant selecting a few Africans to participate in the domination and exploitation of the continent as a whole. It was not an educational system that grew out of the African environment or one that was designed to promote the most rational use of material and social resources. It was not an educational system designed to give young people confidence and pride as members of African societies, okay, but one which sought to instill a sense of deference towards all that was European and capitalist. And this is the same in America, by the way. That's why I don't like the public school system. This is why I'm trying to keep my kid out of it, but it is what it is. Education in Europe was dominated by the capitalist class. The same class bias was automatically transferred to Africa, and to make matters worse, the racism and cultural boastfulness harbored by capitalism were also included in the package of colonial education. Colonial schooling was education for subordination, exploitation, creation of mental confusion, and the development of underdevelopment. So that's pretty much the entire thing. I'm not going to go any further, because again, I don't want to be confused. But that's it. Hold on a second. That's the book. I hope you guys liked it. Thanks for everybody for coming through. Let me see if there was enough people that I could I could scroll up and see every comment. So Kofi came through. Kofi was talking about how a lot of y'all were at church. That's fine. Church. It's too loud. It's too loud. I'm actually nearby a church now, and I tell you, I woke up scared. Not scared, but for real. I was like, what is that noise? Brother Bakari was here. Brother Bakari, I lost my brotherhood with him because he's more crazy than I am. But it is what it is, right? Tyler Solomon was here. Tyler Solomon, that's a good, solid brother right there. Real Black Gentleman, the real Black Gentleman. If you guys don't know, he's a great brother. You guys can check him out. He's sometimes on Bit of Medicine Podcast. Speaking of Bit of Medicine Podcast, he was here. He was asking about Arusha. So shout out to Bit of Medicine Podcast. We got Mr. Tekken himself, Mr. IC3 Black Reparations Nations. They were here. Shout out to that brother. Good brother up in the UK. And of course, Provide Triggers for Evolution, teaching us about Ghana. Appreciate that. I was in Ghana too. It's a really good country. I honestly think that Ghana is probably my favorite. But again, the thing about me is that I want to learn Swahili. I don't want to speak English. I'm really good at English. You guys can tell. But I don't it's not something I'm proud of. I'm not, oh my gosh, I'm better at English. That's stupid. I want to be good at Swahili. I'm awful at it. Okay? But that's the only reason why. If Ghana was speaking Swahili, I'd probably be in Ghana. You know what I mean? Ghana is a really wonderful country, really beautiful country. I recommend Ghana over Tanzania, except for the fact that it speaks English. Except for that, Anyway, so that's pretty much the entirety of the podcast. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Thank you so much. Asante Sana. And I got to go back to my tradition. Let me see. Shamim Hotep, on Kuja, Seneb Neb, Amen Ma'at, Dua, nature.